after 7 o'clock. Call the May 11th meeting to order. And before we start, I want to wish my daughter happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
And we'll start off with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, let's see. Approval of minutes. Jack, did you get to read them?
Yeah, I read the minutes for the meeting for April 13th, 2022, and I move that I had one small edit, and I move that we approve those minutes as drafted and amended.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that's unanimous. And how about the 27th?
No, I have not had a chance to do those yet.
Okay. Oh, not you yet? Oh, okay. All righty. So first order of business is 242-1837, 1260 Salem Street, requested continue to May 25th.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that's unanimous. Next one.
Yeah, I abstain.
And next one is, I have to accuse myself, 242-1787, 135 North Van Road. I hand it over to Mr. Manzi.
Amy, anything you want to say before we take any direct testimony?
You want just a refresher?
If you can, yes, brief.
Okay, so the commission will recall requiring the advancement of a series of borings and groundwater wells to help determine the extent of the glass fill, its true constituents, and whether groundwater has been contaminated. Airport performed this work with GEI's review, our third-party peer review, and provided initial round of testing. Majority of that showed all below reportable limits except for one groundwater well that showed the presence of lead above the MCP reportable limits and concentrations. They performed another round of testing this past April just to double check for that lead, and this second round of testing found lead to be below reportable limits. From here, I think, with that testing done, there's a lot of questions that were answered, and I think at this point we have to talk about how the site is finally treated and closed out. So that's sort of where we're at. And Mike Miller's here with the airport.
Mr. Miller?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, Madam Administrator, thank you. Mike Miller, Lawrence Municipal Airport. I would just like to add to a very comprehensive report that your administrator gave you. This was actually the third round of testing we conducted in April. The first round did show traces slightly above the reportable limits in one well. They did a second round of testing in November, came back below the reportable, and then as a matter of quality assurance check as well as good practice, they did a third round in the spring. And I'm here to inform you that it came back below the reportable limits. So one question that Stantec did have is, given that the findings were below reportable thresholds, they felt that it's probably time to remove the wells or remove them at some point in time. They don't want to leave them there. They felt it'd be a liability, but they wanted me to run that by the commission. How do you like to deal with the ground wells that were installed?
Start with Mr. Lynch.
Mixed emotions. So, how we got to this point, if everybody remembers, I hope, is that we were looking at a proposal to collect surface water runoff and infiltrate it into an area being converted to lawn area and some trees forevermore. And whether that was a suitable approach to dealing with surface water by infiltrating it into not the ground, but into the strata of glass and fill and the material that was there, and what could we be picking up as contaminants and moving it down into the water column. we got into the aggressive recommendation of well sampling, sampling first and then well monitoring second, to help us all to better understand and answer that question. So I think that's where we're at.
Okay.
So I think if we are looking at continuing to collect, the proposal to continue to collect the surface runoff, rainfall, collect it, and then infiltrate it, there's probably some longer-term benefit to having those wells there.
Okay.
We can, just to be able to sample in the event there is any reuse, the wells are there that can be recaptured. I don't think we need to keep monitoring them on a regular basis. I think
But just to
that
have them
most folks who
available.
have a monitoring well installed on the property cap them, lock them, secure them, and leave them. And I'm thinking that is in fact what we probably want to do here, especially where we're going to be infiltrating water.
Okay.
Should there be an issue in the future,
All right,
my opinion.
I'll pass that along.
Yeah, I think we took a pretty careful approach with this project. We did some extensive sampling over a long period of time. In terms of the wells remaining, I think it's probably sensible to at least keep the one that did detect the elevated level of lead. I think it's sensible to keep that. And I don't recall, is that the one that was right at the toe of the slope, right, the nearest one?
It was the nearest one to the airport. I believe it was be in
To
the
the
lower
well.
corner of the, it's well number 1.
There was one that I think was pretty close to the wetland line, and I think if they're the same well, then I would recommend we retain at least one well.
Okay.
If it's not the same one, I think we should probably retain that one as well. So the one that sensed the the elevated levels of lead.
Okay.
And the one closest to the wetland. I think
All right.
those at least we should hold on to. But, that said, about the wells, I think we've done about as good a job as we can to prove to ourselves that there's nothing that, to the best of our knowledge, there's nothing that is contaminating groundwater over the years. And I think, going back to the original project to cap the top of it, to infiltrate water into loam and seed, I think is, at this point, to me, in my opinion, it's a pretty reasonable approach to complete the project, so.
Thank you. Sean,
Yes, sir.
your position on the,
I think that it was a big concern when it came in. I think we've done our due diligence. I think we've asked them to go back to the well, almost the well, a couple times now. Other than what Joe and Jack have already brought up, I don't know what more we can do. I mean, my big concern was what's underneath there. And I don't know what else we can do to make that determination beyond what we've already done, and what we've done hasn't showed anything overly remarkable.
well, you guys all know me. I'm the wild card at the table, and I'm never satisfied. No disrespect to any parties, but I'm never satisfied. We're looking at 30 years of fill at a depth of over 100 feet with bordering vegetated wetlands on two sides, right up into it. We really, regardless of what we've learned, we really will never be sure what's down there. We never had any baseline water testing done at the start of this, so we really don't know where we're at there either. So, with that being said, I'm not gonna blow the project up, but I'm unwilling at this time to stop the use and monitoring of the wells. I think that it's the most prudent thing we can do is to keep the wells operational and have samples taken on a basis to be determined by the commission. And then if we're talking about capping or locking or discontinuing a particular well, we should have a substantial amount of additional data to have in the file before we make that decision. I've seen projects where wells stay in place for 20 years, and I've seen projects where wells are terminated in 6 months. I don't think it would be harmful to anybody concerned if we kept these wells operational and continued to gather data. Considering the amount of material that's there, and the length of time it's been there. I think that's the only glimpse into the past that we have. And so I would ask that the commission consider keeping the wells in order for the time being, and to discuss terminating the wells at a future date.
I think that's a good idea. I mean, versus, from where I was coming from, it's like, what else can we do to investigate? But to continue what we've done and to monitor going forward, I think is consistent with what we're trying to do here.
That's what I was driving at as well, as, I keep saying as well, but in addition to.
Well said.
The cliches are terrible. We know that the goal here is to collect water and infiltrate it through this medium. And to have the ability to monitor that periodically necessitates the wells staying there. Now, do we monitor them monthly, quarterly, once a year? I think once a year, seasonal high water, this time of year, every year, for 5 years at least. Once the system's in place and receiving water, I'm hoping we're gonna prove that that is in fact an appropriate use of disposal of surface water by infiltration, and that there is no side effect because of that. But by taking the wells out and abandoning them, we remove that opportunity completely. So I would agree that leaving them, I said that we want to leave them in place, but I also think that monitoring once a year, seasonal high water, spring, and then climate conditions dictating when in the spring, makes sense.
I would ask you to consider this. High water and low water historically yield different results. High water tends to flush a system out. Low water allows the system to run slower, maybe to stagnate. The readings, I would suggest the readings are going to be dramatically different between high water and low water, and for that reason, for strictly scientific reasons only, I would suggest that we have the monitoring done, analysis done twice a year, once in high, as you suggest, and once when there's low or no water and nothing's moving at all. Because the high water system can tend to flush it out. And is that what we're looking for? If it is, we shouldn't handcuff ourselves at this point early in the system. As I said, it doesn't stop the project from going forward. It doesn't stop the issuance of an order of conditions. It doesn't impose any undue hardship on anybody, I don't think.
Yeah, actually, I was just about to say, it sounds like we're really writing a condition into, is the NOI, and eventually an order of conditions.
And that,
Because that
is probably where that belongs.
I think it is where it belongs.
It probably belongs in the order of conditions.
Because I think at threshold, what we asked to have done is to prove it was at least reasonably appropriate to infiltrate water through the media. I think we've asked them, they've analyzed, they've proven to me it's reasonable to infiltrate the water. But I think we still have some reservations, so to prove us correct, to prove everything correct, we should probably watch that for some reasonable period of time. And that's what becomes that ongoing monitoring. But I think that how we got to where we are was the very request of the NOI to make certain improvements to the site. And that is to regrade, suspend the import of material, regrade, cap, plant, lawn, and collect water and infiltrate it through. That's what the NOI essentially asks.
So would you be suggesting then that we're at a point where we're ready to close?
No, I think we're at the point, we actually put a big pause on this thing 18
Right.
months ago.
I'm not involved in NOI,
Yeah,
Rose is on.
right. But you guys got involved as the landowner, and thank you very much for doing that, right? We all have a similar interest in this regard.
We're walking on a common road.
But I think now that it is the NOI and whatever, so the first request you've made here may be premature. The request is, might we consider abandoning the wells? I think the answer is you're hearing no.
No, that's fine.
So the question is, we don't want them abandoned because we certainly wanted to be able to look at something in the future.
Fully appreciate and understood. No problem.
We're going to eventually discuss, depending on how the NOI goes, how frequently we do that, if as it works its way through the system. I think it's where we're at, right?
I mean, that's what I'm thinking. I just
Yeah.
want to make sure everybody's voices are heard here on this, because let's face it, once we issue an order of conditions and we authorize the capping of this, it's very unlikely that we'll be back here, absent a violation.
Or reuse of the property. I mean, at some point in time, some.
Well, there's some
That peninsula will not be.
There's some area that's not gonna be reused,
Yeah.
Joe.
So, yeah.
As you know, there's a
For-
certain area
forevermore.
there's a certain area that's gonna be off limits, period, end of story. At least that's my understanding, and that has been the discussion up to this point. And,
And that is accurate.
thank you. So, with that being said as well, I guess we're ready to move forward on whatever the next phase of the project is before we close and issue.
2 years ago, we did a site walk and understood the appropriateness of doing what it is they were proposing. And they're ready to move that NOI forward now?
As far as I know, they are.
It's-
Mr. DeRosa's here, he can speak.
So as
to
the
that.
landowner, you should probably say that, but they should join you if that's where we're going to move this.
I don't know if anyone is, I know I spoke with his brother, and he was going to try to join you remotely.
Were you guys prepared to move forward tonight, or are we gonna continue to the next meeting?
I was
knowing
here
what-
tonight to give an update from
Okay.
my.
Yes, you don't
February-
need to do this
Yeah.
tonight.
So we don't have to do anything else tonight. The update suffices. Anything that after this can come forward later.
Yeah.
We're satisfied, I think, with where we are right now. Anybody have any disparate views here on this?
Nothing but upside.
Okay.
I think it would be important to just recall that, so the top flat part of the site will receive RAP, or is slated to receive RAP, and the side slopes are slated to receive loam, hydro seeding, and erosion control blankets. And for some reason, I wanted to say that someone was asking DEP if you could just loam and seed the whole site, and just, and I don't know if that would eliminate the need for a subsurface infiltration stormwater system. But I feel like that was part of the conversation, and then it stalled because of the boring.
Can we shrink that down, or maybe slide it up a little further?
If that's a
So
proposal.
the sectors are, you see the grid in the detention pond, and then the topo grade that comes across? Everything from that topo grade across, that was grass, and the wrap was up this way, correct? From what I remember, was the proposal?
Joe, I had requested, last time we talked about this, I had requested that once there was a solid proposal of where the lawn would be, how the fill would be, I wanted to go out to the site and actually stand on the ground and see where the proposal is.
Sure.
I've been out there twice, and even after having been there twice, when I look at drawing number 1, I can still not accurately picture where I want to see the end of the,
Yeah, it's hard to read.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a long time since we've talked about this, and I think it might be sensible to give the applicant a chance to reconsider what he wants his NOI to look like, and,
Yep.
give them at least one meeting to come back and say, okay, this is it, or no, we've made some changes and this is the revised proposal, so.
And of course, we as a commission are free to close and issue an order of conditions anytime we feel there's no more new data coming in. So when the flow of information either stops or is redundant, we close and we get it off the table. This isn't going to be a lifelong event, as far as I'm concerned. Perhaps we should continue.
So, oh, okay, that's Rob DeRosa. Go ahead, Rob. I can't hear him.
We might have
Rob,
to,
you muted perhaps?
well, we might have to turn them up on our end.
I have to agree that it's been a while since everybody reviewed this, but when we originally started this, before we did the due diligence with the wells and everything else, has anybody done a peer review on the plans that we have submitted? Because prior to the submission, we went to DEP and they looked at various plans, and I know we made some changes on the original submittal where originally was gonna be riprap through the whole site, but we cut back that to where sections were gonna be loomed. I was just curious, are we still considering doing a peer review on the site with the original plans or some plans or?
Well,
Mr. Chair, while we were sitting here, I just started thinking some things. And, a couple things we talked about was looming and fencing in the entire site.
Yeah.
So those should be probably included. I think they also discussed a crush-wrapped roadway as well. So I think we just want to make sure those are included there.
Yeah, to Rob's question, we always intended to do peer review, but until we had an actual proposal that was going to look like something that was finally gonna move forward, we never commissioned that peer review, so I think we're getting close to that. What I think I've heard the chairman ask, and maybe another member ask, is to go back and review this plan in everything that's transpired in the past couple of years and refresh the NOI, that is it what's shown on the plan exactly what you still want to do, that the airport commission is willing to let you do on their property, and then come in with that, under the same NOI, but with an official plan that we can then consider what level of peer review is appropriate. So yeah, we have not done that at all. We never started down that road. We simply stopped until we got a better understanding of the infiltrating capabilities of the fill material.
Okay. I was just wondering if we could start some type of peer review, because we've been sitting on this on the commission, and we've been doing a lot of work trying to get to this point, and maybe, I don't know how much money was left in the funding that we supplied for the review of the monitoring wells. I was just wondering if we should probably, from my company standpoint, if we should plan on doing some type of peer review to move the engineering process along, because it's been a while. I think we submitted the original NOI in May of 2020. So,
Well, the holdup to this point was the installation of the wells, doing the test borings, and doing the water analysis.
right.
We now have that document. So with that being said, is it your position to move the NOI forward as it stands in front of us now? Or do you want to make any modifications to it? If you're ready to go, we'll be happy to dig into it, review it, and come up with a decision for you.
No, we have, the only thing that we presented a couple of different plans to the commission, one with the original submittal, and then a set of plans. The original submittal didn't have the plans with the loom, a larger area loom. I know we're gonna have to do some calculations with just to satisfy DEP with the drainage going into the new collection areas, but I don't know if we should, maybe Amy and the airport and myself and Dave Caldwell get together and come up with one plan instead of this. There's two different plans, like two ideas in there right now, and I would just hope that we can get it like that. Have somebody do a peer review on one of those plans.
Well, let me just add this, and then I'm not gonna. The notice of intent is yours to submit to us.
Right.
It's your proposal on how you want to run this, how you want this to go. We then decide if we like your idea or not. And we either have review done on our behalf.
Right.
We want, the review would be done on our behalf, not to help you draft up an NOI. That's on you. You're not going to get, we're not going to design the project for you. And
Right.
Amy's not going to design the project for you. You need to submit to us a document and a plan that you're happy with, and we decide if we like it, and then we issue an order of conditions.
Okay, I guess I'm just confused, because the original submittal had one set of plans, and we've been in several meetings, and we submitted some another design, so.
I'll tell you what, I recommend that we continue this,
Good.
and that you.
That's a good idea.
That you guys, on your end, get together and decide if you like the submittal that you put before us. Because
Okay.
ultimately, we will issue an order of conditions based upon what you have submitted to us.
Okay.
So if
That's-
you don't,
that's good.
if you don't like what you've put in front of us, you've got to amend it or modify it, because when we close, we will issue our decision based on what's in front of us, and no new information can come in after that point.
So in that statement,
Actually, I'm just looking for something that works for everybody.
yeah, Alan, that statement, there's a lot of pronouns being used, you and us. The reality is it's the applicant, and the applicant here really is a dual thrust, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Miller. It's the occupant of the property who's made alterations to the property, who ultimately is going to be restoring it, but to the liking and acceptance of the Airport Commission.
Correct.
So the approval and the agreement of what that plan is between you folks. And if there's any lack of clarity in that, you guys need to work that out before we take that next step. Because right now, if Rob thinks that there are two plans floating around, we need to have one.
Right, I understand that. I
And-
understand
and-
what-
and
I guess
I
that's-
thought,
that's-
I thought we got there a long time ago. I thought you
I-
folks had a meeting in the
I
mind.
think it might be appropriate for Rob and I and Mr. DeRosa to sit down at the table and.
Okay.
I hear you, I understand where you're coming from, and you will have one plan to decide upon.
Yeah.
That's
And
right.
then we can give you a reasonable order of conditions.
Right.
I
believe you.
So what do
Okay.
2 weeks, 4 weeks, what do you need?
Rob?
I have to talk to the Hancock, just to find out what kind of, I know there was some new, different drainage calculations that they have to submit. So,
Why don't, we're gonna give you 4 weeks.
4 weeks, that's
Come
good.
come back in
Okay.
4 weeks. There's no reason to rush you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I'm looking for a motion.
So move forward, continue.
Motion and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's
Aye.
unanimous. 4 weeks. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir.
Commissioners.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Thank you very
Thank you
much.
for coming in.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rob.
You have the gavel.
Legally, and I'll recuse myself from the project. What can I speak as everybody? That was my,
I didn't go to law school. I can't answer that.
he did. I asked him.
That day.
And, you were absent that day,
No,
right?
I mean, I don't know what the legal protocol is, but I've never seen somebody that, and I've seen this come up before, they usually just do not participate in any way, shape, or form.
The advisory is
The
always to
council
not
is,
participate, even though you
You might
basically
be able to.
surrendering your rights as an abutter. But
As a member or as an abutter?
as, you're doing both if you
As a
recruit you.
conflict.
Nobody's gonna tell you to stick your neck on the line on that one, you know? So you might be right, but legal counsel's not gonna tell you, and I'm not gonna,
You know, I've been sticking my neck out my whole
I
life.
know.
Louis.
That's it, But
Louis,
usually when you do that, you're by yourself.
I'd go to town council
Yeah.
and get an opinion from
I
town.
was just trying to give you guys a history lesson.
Yeah.
I would,
Because I'm very, very familiar with the site.
I would
It's
recommend
fine.
not right now,
Right,
not,
let's,
not.
No, no, not now.
I
I'm not
would
saying
recommend
anything.
no
I'm
history
not-
lesson right now.
I'm not saying
Get an
it.
opinion, and before you get the attention of the Attorney General, get an opinion from somebody.
You're gonna get me a room?
What's that?
You're gonna get me a room?
Sure. Plenty of room. Nobody's going anymore.
No, no kidding. Next one is 242, 1839, 1160, and 1116 Great Pond Road, Brook School.
So you want me to do a quick rundown?
Sure.
Okay, so
Yep.
since the last meeting, the planning board had 2 hearings. And the town's third-party peer review comments have been satisfied. Per the commission's request at our first hearing, you asked them to move the boathouse all the way out of the 50, which they have. So they have a conceptual plan here submitted to you showing that. Commission also asked about potential long-term erosion or sedimentation into the lake. And so they went ahead and they eliminated the existing gravel drive between the boathouse and the lake and replaced that with a proposed reinforced lawn. You guys also asked about the fertilization program. We have a copy of Brooks School program in the packet. The planning board scheduled its own site visit on May 24th at 6 p.m. You're all welcome to join. And they anticipate making a decision at its June 7th meeting. And that's sort of where we're at for an update, and if you want to add anything else, you guys.
I'm Anthony Cleves with Whitman and Bingham Civil Engineers, Andrew Leonard, Principal Planner and Landscape Architect. Also have Paul Griffin from CFO Brooks School and Brian Vaughn from Spolack and Vaughn. But I think Amy summarized that pretty well since the last meeting. We heard just from our last meeting with you folks, kind of the two biggest items that we heard and what we kind of focused on was moving that boathouse out of the no-build zone, which we were able to do that. Moving it a little further back, a little bit to plan right in front of you, getting that out of the no-build zone. And then also, there was some concerns on that existing gravel drive that runs currently between the two boathouses, which would run along on plan right of the boathouse. And I believe some of the commission members just looked at, is there other alternatives we could do besides gravel? Open paver cells, things like that. So we looked at it in a discussion with the school. We went one step further and said, we think we can live without having a gravel path or open concrete pavers, and let's get rid of it and make it turf the whole way. So, and talking with the school and the boating program and everything, and that's still going to work for them. There'll be a reinforced lawn, so it's going to hold up to the foot traffic of people bringing the boats in there. But great comment from the commission, and I think we're happy with the alternative. We hope that you folks are as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Joe? I do know there was a set of engineering plans that was submitted with the original submittal.
Yeah.
We've got some revised architectural, but there's a revised engineering plan too.
Right,
That's
so
part of
it's-
our record.
yeah.
We just don't have it. Okay, fine.
Right.
I'm pleased that they were able to go back and make those changes that we had asked for. And I'm all set. Thank you.
Yeah, we just got this conceptual right now, but we'll
Yeah,
get
Ms.
further
Yeah,
revised
and
plans.
what we wanted to do is, we wanted to bring this before you, before we get all the fine details back on our set of plans, in case you had any other comments, but absolutely, once everyone is kind of satisfied, we're gonna turn around and get the full set of plans, so both you folks and the planning board can reference one common set between all of your
There was
conditions.
one comment I had made at the first hearing, and it probably still holds true, and that is, the existing condition is one thing, and the proposed condition is another, and it's great in both instances, both things work. What's there is status quo, and what's going to be there is an improvement. But construction, it's really construction sequence and demolition plans, and, how it is you lay that out so we can get that as part of our conditions.
Yeah, yes,
Very
we can,
important.
we have demolition plans in the plan set, we have erosion control plans in there, and we do have the sequencing of construction, but what we can do is, we have some contractors that we've been working with the school. We can sit down with them and try and get a little more detail for you folks. Stuff that we would typically do at the pre-construction meeting, but understanding this is a little more of an important location, and we can put some more detail to that for you, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's great for us to have that starting point
Yep.
as part of our record.
Yep.
So when we condition pre-construction meetings and things be done, it's simply refreshing that document and making it current.
Sure, yeah.
I'm all set. Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you.
Could you give us in layman terms what it means to have a reinforced lawn?
Sure. So what reinforced lawn, well, what we're proposing as a reinforced lawn is actually like a cell. They're like these, they're like plastic cells in lieu of the big concrete cells. And what those do is stabilize the loam layer so that when you put grass over the top, if you drove a truck over it, it wouldn't erode the loam layer. That the cells kind of hold everything in place. And it keeps it as a pervious condition because it doesn't actually come all the way up to the surface like you see the concrete pavers.
Yeah.
This would actually be a pervious solution that that just stabilizes below the surface. So water will go through and trucks could go over, or someone's bringing a launch down to the water, they're not gonna rip the lawn all up. And then we have an erosion condition that we're trying to stop to begin with. So
These are dimensional cells, not geogrid.
dimensional, yeah.
They're dimensional.
Yeah,
There's depth to them.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. No, thank you very much. Could you provide a detail on that and maybe specify what the loading
Absolutely.
capacity would be?
Absolutely.
Just so we have that.
And just for your reference, we've already worked with the fire department in other parts of campus, so these cells can hold up ladder trucks in terms of their loading capacity. So we'll provide you all of the cut sheet of it and a detail of it. But that's one of the reasons we were thinking that was a good solution here. So even if they needed access, we wouldn't have an erosion issue.
Yeah, good. Well, where the concern is erosion and,
Right.
and all,
Yep.
the stability of the surface is very important. So,
Right.
Thank
Agreed.
you.
Yes.
I'm all set.
No questions.
I know a guy in Marblehead, and he's got a driveway similar to this contour of this here, and he did that, and he's got a 50-foot custom Novi boat that probably weighs 60,000 pounds, and they back that sucker down the hill to the left into a garage with the stores, no problem.
Wow.
No problem. And what I've seen of this, nice job. The only question I have is, the only one I'm gonna ask you for is elevations on the plan, so I can read them. And also on the other project, which I know we're gonna have, so I might as well get it out of the way, is that I'm interested in the construction sequence. I remember I asked you about
The driveway.
the driveway.
Yep.
So those are the questions I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't have any questions. I just want to thank you for modifying the location of the building. I appreciate you taking it out of the buffer zone. Thank you very much.
I got nothing.
No, okay. So want to go right to the next one, or you want to vote on this one?
Continue.
Well, I think we're gonna need to continue
Need to continue.
So moved.
to, well,
We have
Why do we
planning
need-
board,
what?
sidewalk planning board decision coming
It's
out.
gonna be 2
Which is
weeks.
gonna
Oh, we're
result
waiting for
in
planning board?
final plans coming to us.
right.
So at least it's that window of
Planning
time.
board is,
So the next meeting schedules, so we have a site walk May 24th with the planning board. If we were to go to the next meeting with you folks, that's May 25th, I believe, the day after the site walk. Planning board has a meeting June 7th with, all we can tell at this point, hopefully it's wrapping things up for them. And then we have another meeting the day after with the
So in
commission.
that sequence, when is it, do you feel that you're comfortable of giving us the revised engineering plans that become our record drawings?
I think we do it the next meeting.
Yeah, I think we can.
I think what we're trying to do is have the plans ready for your next meeting, May 25th. So you'd have those, and then if there's any other comments, it gives us another meeting right after the planning board hopefully is done with theirs, in case we have some minor stuff that we missed or you guys pick up something else. So that gives us an opportunity to revise them for the planning board's June 7th meeting, because I think they feel as though they're pretty much all set. So we want to make sure we get as much of your input as we can for that, if that makes sense, if that's
So to be
okay.
on the agenda for the 25th, we would need to have their plans the 18th?
Yeah. or like-
So are you able to get those plans to us on the 18th?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I move that we continue to May 25th.
second.
All those in favor say aye.
All right.
Aye.
Opposed? And that's unanimous.
Thank you very much for your time, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Excellent. 242-1842, Lorraine Avenue. And before we start, just a reminder, everything anything that we discussed tonight is strictly conservation only.
How come? Oh, just kidding.
Good evening. For the record, John Moran from the Moran Cameron Group. We're here tonight representing Dave Kindred, who is one of the property owners on Lorraine Ave. Just as a recap from the last hearing, we met with the commission, went over the project, which is to pave Lorraine Ave. We were proposing some drainage mitigation along the easterly side of Lorraine Ave, closest to the wetland. One of the commission members requested or recommended that to make the ease of the trench, the maintenance of the trench easier, that we install the filter fabric approximately 3 to 4 inches down from the top of stone layer. So the detail for that infiltration trench has been modified to show that. The commission also requested an O&M plan for the infiltration trench. I was trying to find that at the last hearing because I thought we did one. I couldn't find it in the application. We did submit one with the additional information. I did find, the reason why I didn't find one is because we actually put the operation and maintenance note on the plan. So now I had it on the plan and in an O&M plan. However, when we revised the plan, you may recall we were talking with the abutter about adding an infiltration trench on their side, Ms. Saracusa's side of the plan. So we did add an infiltration trench on that side, and they had requested loam and seed to the surface. And the operation and maintenance note on the plan actually still talked about the removal of stones. So what we did is we actually removed the operation and maintenance note off the plan and just left it as a separate document like we had submitted with the first round of revisions. With that same trench that was added on the Saracusa side of Lorraine Ave, the very end of the trench, approximately 10 feet beyond the limit of the Saracusa property, we brought the trench back up to the surface with stone. And the reason for that is there's a small area just off the roadway in that location where the existing topography is a low spot. So to facilitate the draining of that low spot, we brought the stone back up to the surface in that location. As we had mentioned at the last hearing, that trench on that side of the road will actually have a perf pipe in it that will be directed to the existing catch basin down at the corner of Lorraine Ave and Andover Street. We did speak to John Borghese about that way back, and he didn't have any issues with that design. The only other change to the plan is we were talking with the other two owners on Lorraine Ave, number 10 and number 15, and they would now like to pave their driveways as part of this process. What that'll do is the driveway 10 is actually outside, the majority of it is outside, a portion of it's outside the 100-foot. About 3/4 of it is within the buffer. It's well outside the 50-foot. On 15 Lorraine, what'll happen is we will actually move the driveway outside the 50-foot as it's currently in the 50-foot no build. There's an existing gravel drive. The gravel in that location that's within the 50-foot no build will be removed and loamed and seeded. And just as a side note, the commission may recall we were actually before the commission on number 15 Lorraine for an addition. Under that order of conditions, we actually proposed and were approved to pave that driveway in the same location. Unfortunately, they just didn't do it, and that permit expired. So the paving of these driveways should have no impact on the buffer zone or the resource areas. At this point, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, John. Joe?
So I'm glad that there's been a meeting of the minds of, as presented, as to what the proposal is to collect that groundwater and to better manage it. And hopefully the thought being that this is a net improvement to not only preservation of the roadway, but also to the abutter impacts. I'm going to fall on my sword and say I'm awfully sorry to the abutter's attorney who was trying to make a point, and I thought it was with regards to the applicant or the party's rights to pave or do anything to the roadway, and that somehow our actions were going to extend rights beyond what we had the obligation or even the privilege to do. But in reading his letter, which we didn't have at the last meeting, if you recall, we didn't have it, but we've since gotten it, what he is saying is that an NOI that's before a commission must be signed by the owners, and it's not signed by all the owners. So if there has been a meeting of the minds and the owners are now all a party to it, you need to get some more signatures because we don't have an NOI before us properly.
Well, our attorney presented a letter to the commission that states that, based on case law, they do have the right to any owner that has rights in that road has the right to maintain that road.
We're not arguing that, and we're not gonna even act on that. But as a commission, our obligation is to receive an NOI, an application, which must be signed by the owners. We don't have that. We don't have an NOI before
Yeah,
us.
and we ran through this way back at the beginning of this, and we're kind of on that same stumbling block. So the fact that we have met with the abutter, we will talk to them about.
That's what I'm asking.
Getting the signature for, that last signature on the NOI.
Because what none of us wanna do is be able to go through the motions, thinking we're doing the right thing, and then have clearly, some action filed, challenging our ability to even heard the case. Because I don't think it's before us properly. So I apologize for not understanding it fully what the attorney had said. But we didn't have his letter either.
Mhm.
I don't think he delivered it until just before that meeting.
I didn't get it until
Yeah.
after the meeting.
Yeah, so, that's all I have to say. And I would recommend we take no action, by the way.
Jack?
I have no issue with the design. I think it complies, and they've done what we've asked them to do. My only question on this one is just what you verbalized, Joe, about, if the letter is still contesting the other owners of the street, if their ability to file an NOI, if they're still contesting that, I think that needs to be resolved before we can close a hearing. That's all I have.
John, I would love to be able to disagree with these guys, but I think we need that signature on the notice of intent, and I'm sorry that we do, but I think in order for us to be standing on solid ground so that we don't get appealed and you don't get appealed and everybody wastes a lot of time, I think we bring us that complete document, please.
Okay. Yeah, I had that question 2 weeks ago. I talked to Amy because the town attorney changed her mind first about what the regulation was, and then the town attorney said that their attorney, they were for it. And at the meeting, I thought, unless I missed something, I was sitting there, I thought it was pretty much resolved, just worried about that drainage issue. I thought we were all set. That letter blew me away today when I saw it. But that was I knew that the application wasn't valid, but I thought our town attorney had a letter in her possession stating that they were in favor of the project, but they were going to discuss issues with the NOI at the meeting. But they didn't, so I thought it was all set. This is totally blindsided me, but I'm the same thing. It's an incomplete application, so there really isn't anything we can do with it. Sean, who's the legal guy?
Yeah, I missed this day at law school too. Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the language of the letter in the statute that he cites. How it applies to a paper street, it brings it into another category. So I'd have to take a lot more looking to try to get my own opinion concerning this, nonetheless object to others' opinion. It seems like the safest route would be to get everybody's signatures if you can. If this becomes a complete obstacle or hurdle, we'll probably have to go back to town meeting, and I'll do my own digging to see if I take a position on it. I think that's really the only issue in front of us right now on this, so thanks.
Okay.
I agree
know.
procedurally. You need the signature.
Well, we have the butters here. Would you
Yeah,
like-
before we get to that, the only thing, we'll go back as well. Like I said, Mr. Kindred's attorney spoke to, town council the second go-around, because the initial application, town council also said, you don't have all the signatures, you can't submit this notice of intent. And that was one of the things we tried to get way back at the beginning. And the second go-around, it's my understanding that town council agreed that all signatures weren't required. But we'll definitely look into that. Before I open it up to the abutters, I just want to make sure, I think what I'm hearing, at least from a design standard, the commission's all
Done
set
it.
with that.
Oh, yeah,
Agreed.
Yeah.
100% agreed. And
Okay.
I would go so far as to say that from my perspective, and it's focused, narrowly focused as it might be, you should have a high confidence level because this meeting of the minds that's taken place provides relief to one of the abutters whose signature you need. It can't happen without that signature. So in order to get the relief and it's good, it's very good relief from a groundwater perspective, you know, they probably are gonna be, hopefully gonna be willing to consider signing that. I hate to say it, it's just a technicality, the design intent in the hearing of the concerns of the neighbors and trying to work that into something that works is here. We just can't consider it until that application is correct.
And I'm sorry, I should have asked this earlier when we were coming around the horn here. Why are there all these gravel driveways instead of paved driveways? Was that some negotiation that was made when the area was being developed?
It's just an old street.
What year?
Still 50s,
Boy,
40s.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that actually the original house was built.
I think Peter's grandfather, is Peter here?
Yeah, no, but Peter's
Peter's
grandfather
grandfather lived
owned
here,
number
lived- yeah.
10.
They lived there.
Well, the father grew up there, and I think, so the grandfather, I think, owned it.
Yeah, 1930s.
Peter lived there as well.
That's Green Common.
Yeah.
That was the.
30s, yeah.
That was the ancestral family
Yeah.
Thank you.
and others.
Yeah, like I said, I want some,
So do we need to continue, Mr. Chairman?
Well, I think you'll open it up to
well, I
a
think,
butter.
I'd like to hear from the abutters. What,
Well,
If we don't have an application before us,
If it's not properly in front of us, we
I'll
can't.
defer to.
We absolutely
I
can't.
think we should probably defer any further discussion until an application is properly before
I
us.
agree,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if it's not properly before us, we're making a mistake
All
by
right,
taking
so
any further
you-
testimony.
Sean, what do you think? We've got this far.
I don't think it's a legal matter one way or the other. It's just a decision for the board to make.
Yeah. Well, people are here, if it's a matter of efficiency, I have no problem listening.
Just
I
like
think
some
we've
brief-
discussed it enough in great detail that one more discussion can't hurt.
okay, so you're saying yes or no?
I'm saying yes.
As long as it's strictly
Yeah,
related to
strictly wetlands.
new wetlands issues.
Strictly wetlands issue. Do you guys want to speak at all, or not? You do not? Okay, so we don't have to.
Then I move to close.
No.
I mean, I move to
Continue.
continue, sorry.
I bet
You never asked twice.
I bet you they'll speak now.
Sorry. Well, I don't even know if there's a continuance of a matter that's not properly in front of us, so.
We can automatically continue to the next meeting. We can do that,
I'll-
and not be violating anything. So I would move that we continue.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous.
What was the next meeting?
May 25th.
May 25th.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, Joe.
All right, next one. 242-1843, 1761 Salem Street.
So the commission recall, this project is for the upgrade of an existing septic system. During the last meeting, the commission received reports from staff regarding some violations on site that needed to be addressed. And so what ended up happening is the commission issued an enforcement order requiring certain corrective actions to be completed by today at noon. And that a revised plan be submitted showing all the other additional activities that the landowner would like to undertake to improve the property, and formally submit that in a revised plan. They've submitted a revised plan that shows some additional activities that they want to do for the driveway and the island and things to that nature. The project engineer emailed us today with some photos of the areas where the encroachments and violations were taken away. our field inspector performed a site inspection to verify, and I think you found things to be acceptable? Okay. Yep. So, the enforcement order has been complied with, and now we can turn our attention back to the proposed plan and some of the additional work that they added. And Thor Ecology from Williams and Spragus is online with us this evening, so. You know, if you want to add anything, Thor, or?
Well, we have the questions first, Jen, Amy.
Okay, Thor, we'll go through questions from the commission and I'll let you answer.
Sure.
Thanks.
Joe?
Most of the things that we asked to be addressed the last time around showing up on the plans, and I say most, it looks like all of them are addressed on the plan.
Yes.
So I have no questions unless something comes out of the further presentation. I'm all set.
What's the status with the Board of Health on this septic work?
It's approved, right?
It's approved?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, thanks for,
Okay. And you've got the monumentation
yes,
identified,
yep, for Joe's marked up plan.
and the driveway remains gravel?
Yes, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, no, I'm all set. No more questions for me.
Thanks, Jack. Al?
No questions.
I have one question. At the last meeting, there was an abutter that was questioning the property lines. Have you surveyed where the property lines are marked, like it would a permanent marker, or they have not been done yet?
We have not staked anything out about at least the property lines, no.
Okay. Well, on an application where we're doing wetland setbacks and stuff, shouldn't the property line be staked out? No?
Not the field, so.
They just do field inspections?
I think unless we think that the wetland is off-site,
So I think some of it is.
do we think the wetland's off-site?
Isn't it? You have wetlands on the border of your property line, correct?
Yeah, that's correct, but the only buffer zone, or the only wetlands that impact the project are on the applicant's property.
Yeah, but we don't know that.
Yeah.
You know, you have a plan of some type, but the property lines haven't been defined. So you say one thing, they say the other, and we gotta find.
It's pretty uncommon for a property owner to have a great idea. There's no real control out there in terms of a rock wall along. I'm assuming it's the neighbor along the wooded edge. You know, we in our, you know, typically when we prepare a plan like this, we do research. We go back and look at property records, deeds, record plans. So, you know, our determination of the property line should be very close to accurate, if not, you know, as good as it can get in a situation like this. You know, if they need the property line staked out, you know, it's something we could entertain. I know the property owner had the same question. You know, if the commission feels more comfortable with us staking the lot lines, you know, we can, but you know, that could be something included in the order, perhaps.
No, I would. I know that. And I know there's a button that would be inside. Hey, then we might survey it, and he might be 20 feet off. Who knows? You know, but I think where there's an issue there, and it's in wetlands and adjoining wetlands. I don't think it hurt.
No, I mean, if there's an issue, but if there's an issue of where the property line exists, and it's close enough to where the work is being done, then it should be called out. Especially if there's an abutter that's seeking such a request.
Right?
Yeah, I agree. It could turn into a situation like the last one where we might need two signatures if it is on a different property.
Okay.
My recollection from the first hearing was that the abutter's concern was not so much that there was a trespass on his property, I think he was concerned that he had heard that there was material stockpiled on a budding property, which is the Commonwealth's part of Harapaka. And he wanted to be clear that if this was to happen in that instance, what protection does he get? There's not a future trespass on his property. But I want to be clear that you're the engineer, correct, with William Sparge? Aren't you?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. As your survey is concerned, you did an on-the-ground survey. The house is pretty accurately located by coordinates. Your survey standards for your perimeter are coordinatized, so they register together. The perimeter shown on the plan, maybe not on the field, but shown on the plan relative to the house, and the improvements where they are, and the wetlands where they are, those are accurate to the plan, correct? And
Correct.
that the proposed work all inside that property line, if it's built exactly according to that, will be on the private property. So it
That's
really
correct.
comes down to is that to build the septic system and to make certain these other things get done, like putting the placards in, they just simply need to know where the limit of work is, and that be staked out, the work, not the property line, but the work be staked out prior to commencement of construction, correct? It's really no different than anything else we do. We don't protect, we don't even address any potential for a trespass. But we do want to make sure is that what's proposed in front of us is contained within the property. And what we have here is all contained in the property, with the exception of removing the stockpile stone in that northwesterly corner that's on Harapaka land. That's the only stuff that's outside of the property line, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So I don't see this as being any different than any other project we ever address. You might have had a legitimate concern, but I think that if they build what's before us in accordance with a staked out septic system, then we know it's being done on their property.
I asked them if they would do it, and they said that they would.
The perimeter?
Yeah,
I don't think, did I
Yeah,
hear?
right.
I don't think I heard that.
said if that's an issue, that we can always reverse the tape. You did say that you would be willing
I think that
to,
along the line back here.
do the property line.
I think it's part of all of this.
Well, you said that, didn't you?
I did
Come
say
on
that. You know, we could stick out the septic system so we know that's on the property, but, you know, I mean, we do know it is, but if the commission is concerned and the abutter has concern, you know, I know Jose, the property owner, also it's not clear out there along the neighbor, I think it's 20 Campbell, where that property line is exactly. So it may be, you know, it could be in everyone's best interest to have at least a portion of that staked.
Thank you. Aside from the plan, I don't have an issue. Do you have any questions about the plan?
No.
Do you, Ryan? No. Okay. Do you want to speak it up?
If you don't mind.
I don't mind.
I beg to differ.
Just tell us who you are.
I'm Dennis Hamboyan from
Okay.
50 Campbell Road.
Okay, Dennis, thank you.
And there was actual debris over the property line, not just in the forest.
Behind the house, you mean?
Behind the house, correct. And it's over the property line, as well as 20 Campbell. So both property lines were suffered on this. The other issue is, I agree with Mr. Napoli that if you don't know where the property line is, how do you know that you're within the confines of the property itself? So we do need, and thank you for suggesting that, a stakeout of that property line. The only other question is, if you defer this 2 weeks, we're actually out of the country. Is there a way to make it another cycle so that we can still be here at the next hearing?
Well, your only question was the property line, correct?
Correct.
And you just heard him agree that he will do it.
Correct. What I don't know is if they'll respect it because it was not respected already.
Well, that would be up
to us to enforce.
Well,
When you say respect it, what do you mean? Whether they'll show it accurately or not, or whether
No,
or
no,
not
no, no, no. Work and debris was put over the property line.
Right.
So there was no respect of property lines.
But our approving this, they can't do any work for how long after this?
21 days.
21 days, so there's not gonna be any work done for 2 weeks plus 21
Okay,
days.
fair enough.
Is that accurate, guys?
and I'm
If
looking
we
on
don't
the-
close tonight,
Yep.
we close at the next meeting, so
Yep.
it'd be 2 weeks, then
14
21.
plus 21.
If we do close tonight, it's 21 days from tonight.
Right.
Correct?
What I
Yeah.
suggest, though, is the property lines be delineated
Well,
and
they-
clear.
they're in agreement on that.
Well, they're gonna do that.
Yep.
Yeah,
And
there'll be visible boundaries out there for everybody to see.
and like I said, if they say they're gonna do it, they're gonna do it.
Yeah, they'll do it.
Because we'll make sure that they do it.
No, they'll do it.
So, I mean, they're reputable, if they, he
Look,
would. he
I'm
would-
trying to eliminate potential pitfall here. Can we zoom that out and get it? I want to make sure everybody's saying the same thing. This is, how many acres? What kind of perimeter property line are we talking about? So
4.5 acres.
Campbell Road is this side, correct?
Yeah.
So Sue,
Correct,
the encroachment you're talking about with debris is behind the house in this vicinity, correct?
correct.
So to address your concern, this 1,000-foot line is what you
Correct.
need. You don't need a $30,000 survey with
All I'm
modification
saying is
around the
that
full
line.
perimeter.
That line.
This one line.
Correct.
So not the lines, but one line.
Right,
One line,
Be clear on that.
you got that right, Thor?
correct.
Yes, just to make sure, it's the, if I get the direction, I guess it would be,
Northeast.
that was the easterly property line
Yeah.
along 20 and 50 Campbell?
Yeah.
Well, frankly, you almost also have to have the corner, though, right?
The corners, being this interior corner, or?
Right. No, no, the interior corner to the forest, because that's also abutting 50 Campbell Road. It goes all the way down.
Sorry, make sure I'm clear again.
Yep,
Which corner, are you talking about?
that
this
corner right there.
So starting there
Yes.
and going all the way up to there covers this whole side of those backyards from 20.
Correct, but if
Extend this way.
you zoom in again,
Zoom-
toward Napoli, toward Mr. Napoli, no.
The
up
other
a
way.
little bit.
Zoom out.
Zoom out, yeah. So that corner going toward Mr. Napoli, yeah.
This way
You
too?
all- Yes,
This is all state land. So this is all the Harold Parker land, not part of Campbell, put into the map. That's all,
And we have a
yeah,
stone wall.
that's all part of Harold Parker.
They just have to hit that bottom pin.
Right, the corner.
Yeah.
I guess if you're comfortable that he's not over the forest land, that's fine.
No, I think they're admitting they're over forest land in the circle up here.
Right, which is why my argument is why
Yeah,
not
over there.
also survey that corner?
Well,
I think we're saying just the opposite. Everything that's in there is all coming out. We're
It's
not
all
telling
coming
you not, but just say take all of that out. That's actually part of the NOI, is to remove that material, correct? It's actually part of the enforcement order, wasn't it?
yes.
Yes.
And that's already started, or is it complete? That's already,
The tents and all that stuff has been removed.
so they already pulled that up?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there any more questions?
Oh, thank you.
You all set?
All set.
Thank you. Okay, so the enforcement order has been,
So you could vote to lift the enforcement order.
So moved.
Second.
all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's unanimous.
And now we move to continue, right, Amy?
Yes.
All right.
Or close, if you guys are, if there's no,
I think we
You don't
need-
have a
we need
decision
to
tonight
vote.
anyway, right?
I don't, no, I don't.
It's the same end result, move to continue. And I'll second you. Move
But,
motion.
plus you want to see I thought you want to see something on a map, not just on the
Yeah.
ground.
Yeah, I think we want to keep it open.
Yep. So move.
What do we want?
We want to keep this open, so we're continuing. We're not
What-
closing.
Do we want some plan revision, did I hear?
If they're gonna,
Staking of the.
they're
of
gonna
that
monument,
boundary.
they're gonna
Property
monument
line.
that property line.
Want to see it on the plan?
We want to see that on the plan.
It's-
Oh, you
it's
mean,
on
you
the
want to
plan.
see, just
They
like the
want
wetland markers, you want proposed
We want to see the
monuments at the property line?
Yes, yes.
On the plan? Is that
Yes.
Could I just clarify that the stakes are literally just gonna be right where that lot, the property line is shown there, it's not gonna be any different than what you're looking at.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a net whether we close it or whether we continue it, so
Okay,
it's.
I just want to clarify if
safest
you're looking
course.
for anything further from us or the applicant for next meeting.
I don't think we are.
So between now and next meeting, it's really just field work staking that boundary line.
It doesn't
Yep.
hurt just to continue, and we
Yeah,
can close
well,
it
no,
into the
sure,
next meeting.
I know.
And if it
I
shows
agree.
differently than what's on this plan, to modify
Right.
the plan to what's on the ground.
Right, if there's any, closing it would be a mistake.
Okay, so did you get that, Thor? So they want you to physically stake that line out between now and the next meeting. And if the staking bears something different than what we have the plan before us, then the plan needs to get revised.
Okay. So it won't be any different than what's on the plan, what we're showing you. So I'm just not sure the point of keeping it open other than,
I think we're dancing around the obvious here. You showed the encroachment on Harold Parker as an area of encroachment with actions to remove stuff. If there is visible evidence over the property line of debris from this property on an abutting property, show it on the plan and make it part of the NOI to remove that material. That's what the applicant's asking for. That's what I think. It's not so much the line, other than what's out there, is get it out of there and make sure it doesn't happen in the future.
thank you.
So just so I'm clear, is the staking of the line required under the enforcement order or the NOI? So, because they could be separated.
It should be, well, it was not part of the
It wasn't-
enforcement order.
it wasn't
so-
Just got rid of the
So,
enforcement order.
So
so
this-
we closed the enforcement order, so it's now part of the NOI.
Well, the enforcement order could be modified to require the staking.
We just closed it.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Had we not,
New
we
one.
could have probably.
Sorry, I should have spoke up sooner.
No, it's a good point.
But there is no harm in keeping this open
Right,
till the next
exactly.
meeting. There is no
Right,
harm.
no,
It's a
there is-
net.
Yeah. No, I'm just clarifying what procedure is requiring the staking. Is it, the
Either.
Yeah.
So we're not just leaving it open, make sure with the engineers, he's looking for clarification. We're not just leaving it open because we don't have a decision that we will have at the next meeting. We are asking to make a revision to the plan, show the debris, make a notation that it's to be removed as part of this filing, and we will consider that at the next meeting.
Correct.
Hopefully that addresses the abutter concern, and it addresses a complete NOI that includes information and work activities within our jurisdiction.
It's a home run,
I agree.
out of the park.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous.
All right,
Thank
so
you.
continue to the 25th. Thanks, Thor.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Next one, okay. RDA 288 Foster Street.
All righty. So this is a request for determination for the installation of a new septic system and associated grading to replace an existing system. The new system will partially be within the existing footprint of the existing system and shifting to the west. Proposed temporary stockpile area will be located near the house in the existing lawn area, outside the buffer zone. And the narrative does state that soils aren't expected to be stockpiled on site, taken off daily. Conservation Department staff visited the site to observe site conditions and reviewed the wetland line. The closest wetland flag across the street, which is across the street, is an area of mowed field on town property, which is on town farm. Based on hydric soils and the presence of wetland vegetation, we moved the closest flag up gradient by 17 feet. And an updated plan shows that. So that made the work 68 feet from the wetland at its closest point. And it is outside the riverfront area to Mosquito Brook. While on site, looking at the wetland across the street, there was an area of grass clippings being dumped in the 25 to the no disturb zone. And the pile was sort of directly located across from the street from the subject property. The Board of Health has issued approval of the design for this system. Bless you. I don't know if the commission has any questions. The applicant is here this evening with us.
Joe? Never been accused of being a wallflower. Are you dumping grass across the street?
My daughter does.
Okay, they're gonna stop, right?
Absolutely. I actually didn't know I wasn't supposed to, so now I do know.
Okay. Do we need them to clean it up? Or just leave it alone? What do we need?
Well, I think it could use some cleaning up. It's a
So
big
you'll
pile.
talk to them as part of the pre-construction?
I cleaned some of it up this weekend.
Okay.
So.
You're an honest man, thank you. I'm all set.
Yeah, I'm all set, same issues as Joe.
Yeah?
So Tim, the grass seems like it's not a big deal, but it kind of is.
Yeah.
Because it's a real big problem on every neighborhood, in every neighborhood. You can follow across from people's homes, and you can see on the opposite side of the road where there's open space, piles of grass, limbs, leaves, and it almost becomes a neighborhood activity. So it really, I know that we would appreciate it, and it would help your project a lot.
It'll get done.
I think that also, either we do it or we have Tim do it, where the grass is dumped there, that appears to be a fence post, and a monument be placed there as a reminder to neighbors
Sure.
who think that it's okay, who think that Tim just made a nice dumping area for them. We want.
My neighbors actually have lawn services that take their clippings someplace else and dump them, so it's all mine.
It's all
It's all mine.
It's all a matter of who you hire.
Yeah.
You know, some neighbors are the recipients of their lawn guys because they charge a little less. You never know. Anyway, thank you very much.
Yeah.
I'll see.
I have no questions.
No question?
No questions.
Motion?
So recommend issuing a negative, closing the hearing, and issuing a negative number 3 determination with conditions that require a pre-construction meeting to observe erosion controls and go over the project. Having the grass clippings removed by that time, and then a post-construction meeting to verify compliance and approval for removal of the erosion controls.
So are you looking for a 4x4 wooden post with a placard?
We just have those little wetland markers that,
Yeah.
So put them on the existing fence?
on that fence.
We can
just
do that.
Attach
Okay.
it, attach it.
Staff can do that.
We can do that
That's
online.
that's our property, so.
I'm
we
just
do it.
asking that I thought it might
No,
be a
no,
good idea.
no, it's a good idea.
Because the more of those that are out there, it just
Yep.
helps.
Yeah, that entire line of fence posts is knocked down and
I know.
gone because of snow plows or whatever.
Yeah, no, I know it.
We'll figure it out.
Ever since the town bought that property from the family, the Foster family, there's been cutting, but no actual maintenance of roadways or fence posts or anything, so. Yeah, you're right.
So I move the motion as described by Amy.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for all your help,
Thank-
Amy.
oh, yeah, thanks, okay.
All right, next one
We'll
is
see you
small
soon.
project, NACC number 138.
Where are we at?
Friends of Trail.
Small project, phone app.
Phone it, yeah.
Phone at?
Vegetation management plan?
No, certificate of compliance.
Oh,
No, COC for 242-1790.
Oh, we skipped that,
Oh,
huh?
I'm sorry.
1592, sorry about that.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
Are you 1592?
No.
Your phone app, stand by.
All righty, let me just get the as-built up. Okay, so this order was issued in November of 2020, and it governed the construction of a 22 by 22 garage addition, attached breezeway, and a rear deck, and an infiltration trench to capture roof runoff of the new garage. All work was to be outside the 50-foot no-build zone and was 61 feet from the BBW at its closest point. Per the engineer's certification letter, the only deviations including shifting the location of the infiltration trench to the appropriate downslope side of the garage roof and an actual reduction in the amount of driveway extension paving to meet that. Oh, no, don't. They need to extend part of the driveway to meet the new garage, but they didn't pave as much as they previously proposed. Visited the site throughout construction and when the final approval of erosion controls were removed. Site is stable. There's no outstanding issues. So I recommend issuance of a full and complete certificate of compliance.
Fully incomplete certificate.
Full and complete.
Fully incomplete, that's strenuously good.
No questions?
Jack?
No questions.
None. Nothing, sir.
No questions.
Motion? Move that we grant the COC for 242-1798, 1592 Salem Street.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that's unanimous.
All right.
Okay. Now we can do small project.
All right.
Phone in now.
Now we do small projects. All right, where is it? Oh, here it is. I was looking for phone. All righty, let's see, renew request. All right. Let me just start with a little rundown. Alrighty, Commission recall in March of 2015, the Commission issued approval under small project categories, pruning existing vegetation and other, to allow FONAT, Friends of North Andover Trails, to undertake vegetation pruning and removal of deadfall along the trails on various open space properties in accordance with the vegetation management plan that they provided. Work to be undertaken by hand within the wetlands and the 25-foot no disturb zone, and power hand tools can be used outside the wetlands and further than 25 from the wetlands. FONAT has submitted and updated the VMP. It hasn't changed significantly. There's a couple of properties that were added since, and you know, the Commission knows we rely on FONAT greatly for their partnership in maintaining our trails and open spaces and letting us know what's going on out there. So, you know, Glenn and I knew this was coming up. It was a 5-year approval, and it's up for renewal. So that's that in a nutshell. If you have questions for Glenn, we can have at it.
Thank you. Joe?
I just have two, and one specifically focuses on the Foster Farm. And one of the concerns that we had with the oil release in the neighborhood was the use, or limitation of use of some of the trail network out there. Is any of these areas where they're proposing vegetation management part of the areas that we're looking for people to stay out of until that thing's cleaned up? Do you know? You may even remember that correctly. There was some concern about.
There was a trail closing as part of that release.
Yeah, so is
Oh,
that?
yes,
Is
yes.
that any of these trails?
Yes, it's one of them, yes.
So do we not want them to do any vegetation, hold off on
Probably
that?
not, that's right. For the
So we
Foster
don't want to
Farm
do that.
Trail, where
Okay.
were you aware of the?
Just for the record, I'm Glenn Aspesley from 1132 Salem Street. Yeah, I don't think I've really heard any details about what's going on there, but
Okay,
yeah.
Stick around.
stick around,
I
They're
am going,
next.
I'm going to.
yeah. So,
So what we had is a hazardous release, and because of
Right.
that, we actually suspended activity, use of some trails in that area. So what we're asking you to do is to forego vegetation management on those trails that we've closed down
I see.
until such time as that's cleaned up. So that's my
Okay.
point.
So,
And we have signage out there.
and I think Amy will help guide you through what that is, all right? And the second question I had was specific to the Boston Hill, and specific to the conservation restrictions. So the vegetation management proposed there were some time limitations because of habitat for elfin dwarf
Okay,
butterfly.
okay. Yeah, that is actually,
So that's a priority
Up there in
habitat. So we
priority
gotta be
habitat,
real
yeah.
careful with vegetation management and the timing of that.
The frosted elf.
Frosted elf, thank you.
yes.
I was trying to sock you, what I was talking about.
We haven't had a work day there in a while, but it's usually
Well,
just,
What I'm saying is if
Yeah,
this is
that's
part
good
of the
to know.
vegetation management, be cognizant to date limitations
Yeah.
of when that can be done.
Yeah,
unfortunately, the clearing that was there is not a clearing anymore, so the frosted elfin won't be making an appearance, but it's good, that's an
But
important
they look for
consideration.
meadow, right?
yeah. they do.
Yeah, there was,
Open.
there was a clearing, but it was
It's
only,
closed.
things are only a clearing when they get cleared, and this hasn't been cleared.
Okay.
For 5 years or so.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Jack?
Yeah, I think it's, I think your new order is good, and I think it's, you guys are very organized. Whenever you post a notice that I see on email, it's good. I hope you're copying Amy with those.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's when we send out our call for volunteers, and copy Amy on that.
Yep.
That serves as the notification that we'll be
Notification.
working,
Yep.
so.
Just want to make sure that's good. And honestly, Glenn, I think we do have a really good resource in town. Taylor is a very good vegetation expert. And, I think we could get a partnership where we could control invasives better on some of these reservations that we have, in the vicinity of the trails. So if we could kind of do a cooperative thing where, Taylor might be able to walk in advance of the trail clearing effort, identify some invasives, maybe that could be part of the effort and, just help our open spaces in town. So I don't want to make that part of the order, but I just want to point that out as an opportunity that we could take advantage of while Taylor's still with us.
You know something we don't know?
No, I don't. I'm hoping he stays with us.
I know, me too.
Since he is with us.
That's right. That's all I have.
Yeah?
Just repeating on the Foster Farm property, due to the oil spill that occurred out there in January, that's what this is all about. An oil truck overturned on the street,
Right.
dumping the oil into the brook, which flowed through our property. And it's a hazardous condition, it's literally a very hazmat condition, so working in it wouldn't even be safe.
We
Yeah.
marked
Yeah.
trail closure, yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
anyway,
That's good to know. I mean, we usually do go out there once a summer, just
Yeah.
to keep the field open. But I think it's also worth, someone else mows that.
yes, we have,
So-
Bicycle guy?
we have, there's a,
So just make sure that person knows.
yep,
'Cause
he won't be.
a lot of the time we go out there and it's mowed.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have actually a contract with him. He's one of the three farmers in town that farm fields for us. to
But
keep
someone goes out, well, someone was going out with the lawnmower and like doing a path. I'm not sure.
Oh, I don't know about that.
Yeah, no, yes, we do.
It was probably,
Yeah, we do. There's some local folks out there that like to use it, and they came before us, I don't know, a couple, 3 years ago.
I don't think it was that long.
We had no issue with it, we just wanted to know about it.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
that was the conversation, was ask first. We didn't have a problem with the work they were doing so much as we had a problem with them not coming and asking.
Right.
So, I think they either should or do, but
Okay.
I can check that out myself. I live on Foster Street, it's easy for me to do it. All right, thank you, I'm all set, thank you.
Sean? I don't have any questions, but I've reached out to you before. I'm our commission's member on the Master Plan Improvement Committee, and I'm on the open space and board, and so much of it deals with phone act. So nice to meet you face to face, and I'll be communicating with you later on to try to see how you guys can help us out, okay?
Likewise.
Great, thank you.
Brian?
Yeah, just to touch on the invasive species again, is somebody responsible for identifying the invasive species before they're removed? I know it's a volunteer operation, so, and then secondarily, how and where are they being disposed of if they're, not being left on site?
We really, our dealing with invasives is primarily just bittersweet overgrowing the trail, and that's pretty much it. And those are, the bittersweets usually either just lopped if it's overhanging the trail, or pulled up by the roots if possible. That's really the only, invasive that we deal with regularly. Anything else, we just, if it's not in the trail itself, we don't actively go around and remove it. But,
Yeah, bittersweet is nearly impossible to get rid of.
At Mazareco Farm, it's pretty much killed all the mature trees.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Okay.
Impossible to control.
That's it. Yep, sorry.
It's okay. Okay, so we need a motion.
So recommend to.
What category are we under?
Small project.
I know, but which category of
Oh.
small project? Is it I don't think we're an L or an M. I think we actually have a set one for vegetation management, right?
No, we have one that fits all.
I think we have small landscaping, in your yard, but I think this is probably another.
It was a pruning of existing veg, which was one, and then other, which would be our L.
Our catch-all.
Yeah.
Okay.
This was last approved in 2015.
Right.
I move that we approve the proposed project under subsection L of our small project bylaw.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's unanimous.
And what, any conditions?
Oh, yes, just, I would carry over what we previously required in our 2015 decision. So 2 business days notification to the Conservation Department. Work.
Okay, so you want me to just read from this,
Yeah.
in essence? All right, so, contact the Concom within 2 days prior to doing any activities. Any work that is within 25 feet must be done by hand tools only, no power tools, but outside of 25, you can use power tools. Any branches, debris, etc. will be removed from the property using bags. All invasive vegetative species shall be removed from the site and properly disposed of. And this permit will expire in 5 years.
And just to be clear, the trail we closed was the Hillcock Trail?
Yes.
Hillock Trail?
Hillock.
So
Yeah.
that no work will be permitted on the Hillock Trail for vegetation management until such time as Conservation Commission releases the hazardous nature of the release, of the oil release.
And that's my motion.
Need a second.
Al second.
Al second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Greg. Good plan, whatever.
Okay, next.
I can only pronounce your first name, and I can't even get that right.
Next one is an enforcement order, which is my unhappy one. Foster Street.
Alrighty, so at the last meeting, the commission issued an amended enforcement order that was poised to assess fines by a deadline for the submittal of Wood's ecological impact risk evaluation. And that was submitted on time, so no fines were assessed. The commission will recall receiving a memo from Clean Harbors the night of our April 27th meeting. None of us were able to review that. GEI this week was able to review that April 27th memo and Wood's evaluation, and we received their comments today, midday, and you have those in your packets. And I have shared that with Clean Harbors. What's that?
Has Clean Harbors supplied all the information that is needed to eliminate this enforcement order?
They've complied to the point where they've given initial information, but based on GEI's latest round of comments, they're requesting additional information and investigation.
So therefore, Clean Harbors has not supplied the information that is needed to ratify this enforcement order.
I don't hear it that way. I hear that they're in compliance, but we should not suspend the enforcement order, but there's still
Right.
additional activities
Yes.
that they need to do with new deadlines. And we did talk about the capability of reinstituting fines and setting a new clock.
Yes.
At the last meeting, we talked about that,
Yes.
but we didn't, we were actually waiting to get some information today before we reset the clock.
Right.
If it was necessary or not.
That's right. And that's something I discussed with GEI, and we can go over that with Mike, as he's on the call with us. I don't know if you wanted Mike to provide just a brief rundown on,
Sure.
Is there a Clean Harbor representative here to answer Mike's questions?
Alan's on the call with
Alan's,
us
okay.
too.
So
Yes, I'm here.
When we talk about Mike's questions, just to be clear, are we talking about the May 11th letter?
Yes.
From GEI?
Yes,
And so the letter that was published on May 11th,
yes,
we're looking for response from Clean Harbors?
Clean Harbors, yes.
Okay.
So Mike Sabulis, maybe you could give us sort of the highlights of your memo today and what the commission should really concentrate on for requesting information and potential deadlines for that.
Sure. Can everyone hear me all right?
Yes. Yep.
So Mike Sabulis, GI Consultants, assisting the town of North Andover with respect to the Foster Street oil release. As mentioned, a lot of our comments this evening will be around the May 11, 2022 letter, which was just sent out. I have a chance to the responsible parties today. So there's a lot, obviously, to digest in there, a lot of comments, technical and otherwise, that the responsible parties will, have to take some time to review and get back to us about. For the commission, I think GEI has 3 takeaways that we'd like to present to you tonight that kind of, I believe, encapsulate where we landed with our review. One, we appreciate the data that was provided by Clean Harbors and Wood. It was a good initial cut, and as noted in Wood's evaluation, this was a preliminary investigation, as essentially a baseline, from our opinion, level. At this time, it was our opinion that more info is needed to evaluate. More information is needed to evaluate the nature and extent of the wetland, especially based on some of the findings found, particularly in the areas of the release upgrading of the Foster Street culvert and downward toward what is known as transect SD2. That is one of Wood's transects where I understand and have seen oil sequestered in the hummocks in that area. On that point, there's also statements around ecology. Our opinion is that the statements on ecology made at this point are premature, and that additional observations through the spring and summer growing season are needed to kind of understand the impact and or damage, if occurred, to the wetland complex. This specifically comes, or one of the places comes from, exploring a notion that the pathways to ecological receptors are incomplete. We have questions on that because obviously there is still oil present in hummocks in and around the SD2 transect. Those still, in our opinion, act as a potential exposure pathway for ecological receptors. Lastly, there is a remedial option on the table from Clean Harbors to do some hummock washing, soil washing of oil impacted areas that are out there, and we have several questions around that. In the vein of that, one of the questions we asked back, which was, I believe, a component of the enforcement order, was an evaluation of remedial options, not necessarily a singular one. So the town can understand what was evaluated and from not only ease of implementation perspective, but a cost-benefit perspective and how it works. I just threw in a lot of information. Let me stop there for any and all questions.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Joe? So I've read Mike's summary letter, a GEI summary letter, and focusing on the conclusions and focusing on the follow-up questions. Some of I read as disagreement on nomenclature in that we would choose words that state more clearly what we think to be the significance of an impact in particular areas, where they use more toned down language such as the booms were successful. Well, they did their job, but they didn't do 100% of the job, is your perspective on that. So I think are we just wrestling with nomenclature to get an actual accurate use of words to describe the situation, or are we relying more on the data moving forward? Because there seems to be data that says there's more things to do, but the words may downplay it. What is it we're looking to get out of them to clarify?
I think you nailed it. We are in the preliminary stages of data collection. I think that is accurate and presented in Wood's technical memo. I think more data needs to be collected to evaluate the nature and extent of the wetland. With respect to nomenclature, there is words used like, to put it bluntly, this release from our perspective is of a temporal nature. There was the initial release on January 24th, and conditions persisted obviously throughout that time, with residual contamination still being present in the wetland and sequestering the hummocks as of May 11, 2022. With respect to your question about the booms, our concern around there was less about nomenclature, but rather, again, about the temporal nature of the release. Some of those booms, the larger boom systems, were deployed till almost a month, 3 weeks to a month later, and with growing, with more deployed later on. So there was a stretch, at least initially after release, where minimal booms were deployed. So I would say for the Commission's consideration that that is a point beyond nomenclature, if that makes sense.
So following up on your answer, Mike, is that as laymen, but nonetheless conservation professionals here, we were concerned with the logical potential for impact that the longer something went unabated or only marginally abated, there was a likelihood it would move further downstream, have a broader impact, and maybe a more significant impact downstream that where it could have been contained. That aside, because we all know that it took a long time for that to happen, the goal here is to determine what are the limits of impact and what is it that's being proposed in each of those areas of impact. We have a better grasp on what that scope is now. We're not still waiting on defining that. That has been defined now, correct?
It has been identified. I wouldn't say nature and extent has been defined. So the investigations performed to date have supplied data in various areas. And again, there's areas, one of the locations we looked at, it is of concern, is the SD2 transect. It's below one of the boom systems where Clean Harbors has proposed to do some hummock washing and where Mass DEP, GEI, and the town of North Andover Conservation Commission have observed oil sequestered in the hummocks. That area, from our perspective, hasn't been evaluated fully enough to understand the extent of what those hummocks, how those hummocks might be impacted, and what sort of means might be best suited to deal with that.
So I see a situation like this as not being a simple snapshot in time. it's quite fluid, no pun intended, or maybe fully intended, that as we do more work, we discover more things, it broadens scope, it may narrow down areas of concern in another aspect, but as this thing evolves, it changes. It grows in areas and shrinks in other areas. But this is not unusual for this type of release. I mean, it's not as though someone's dragging their feet or not dragging their feet. It's just a long, drawn-out process. Is that correct? I mean, are we getting the level of response that we expect to be getting, in your opinion?
Yes. And again, with respect to the data that we have, to be just cut to the chase, we have, I think Wood and the Clean Harbor team in Wood did a nice job identifying these areas where there's impacts and where there's not impacts, which also is very important. I think that next step to better understand the nature and extent in the areas where there are impacts needs to be done with some haste. And the reason for that is some of the data that was presented was identified or discussed as non-hazardous. From our perspective, that's not appropriate terminology, which kind of comes to your nomenclature point. Really, when we're discussing ecological risk assessment, we're looking at the terms acute and chronic. So something that would cause immediate harm, that being acute, and something that could have a long-term detriment, that would be chronic. So again, that's a nomenclature issue, but ways of risk should be expressed from our opinion when evaluating this second release to ecological receptors, so the bugs and bunnies in the wetland.
So I remember a couple months ago, Mr. Wood, being the professional that he is, came in and tried to be clear to us by saying that we can give you a preliminary report, but it will only be that, and that there's going to be much more work that comes out of that. So that's what we've received is only the preliminary report, correct? He's still gathering additional information.
I think that would be one of the things that we would want to understand tonight is what the next steps are from this initial investigation.
Got it. I'm all set. I'm sure I'll have more, but let's go around with others ask. Jack?
Yeah, Mike, I appreciate your GEI's efforts to review the Wood Environmental and Clean Harbors reports, and I greatly appreciate the background that you provide in your report, your review report. I think for the purposes of the commission, what we're looking for now is some focused recommendations for Clean Harbors and Wood Environmental to fill in the deficiencies that you've identified. And I think the closest thing to that is at the back end of your report, an evaluation and recommendations of remedial options for the town's consideration. You know, I think what we have to do, and maybe it's a joint effort between us and GEI, is to pick out these recommendations for focus that Clean Harbor is going to have as they move forward from this preliminary effort into, you know, a more comprehensive effort as time goes on. So, you know, these 9 points that you call out, maybe we take them as stated, maybe we can combine them, group them, condense them down into specific points, but you know, you're trying to bridge the gap between between the preliminary efforts that Clean Harbor has and a final solution that's going to work for the town. I think we have a good framework here, but I'd like it to be more focused and maybe, again, maybe combined into fewer points that that will effectively direct Clean Harbors and Wood Environmental, direct their efforts toward moving this thing quickly and effectively toward a solution that the town is going to be happy with.
So if I could weigh in on that right now, there's a point that's important in this process, and fully agree that Clean Harbors and Wood are working through that process and getting there. The understanding of risk to the ecological receptors is what will drive and the human health receptors is what will drive the remedy. So that's where the next step of data collection, in our opinion, is very important, because it's all driven by, do you have a risk, and then do you have to clean it up? So at this point, we have the preliminary data, which indicates in some areas there is no risk, and likely no more remedy may be needed, and in other areas, there is potential impacts and risk that may need to be addressed. So that's where that next step, that's where those two things, in our opinion, kind of interweave and are very important, having that next set or more streamlined, defined set of data to make those decisions or to support Alan's decisions on which way to go and make recommendations is very important.
So it sounds like we have a few areas of focus, areas meaning specific points within the spill where you're recommending further data sampling needs to happen and to support that evaluation of risk. And
that's accurate. Based on the data provided, it seems that an area, let's call it from around the initial area of the culvert down to the boom systems, and again, including a transect called SD2, there is some risk there. The data we have shows concentrations, field observations indicate sequestered oil and hummocks. These are the areas that are the question back to Alan and Tony is like, is there risk there, and what are the steps to mitigate?
And is sample point number 4 another one that seemed to have an elevated value?
Tony or Alan, please correct me if I'm wrong. I believe wood on SD4 was down on the other side of Lost Pond. Is that accurate? And I think you guys recommended that some forensics be done because there might be some confounding sources there.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
At SD4, which we took from the center of the channel, on the downstream side of Lost Pond Lane. First of all, in order to collect that sample, we had to move a lot of cobbles and large rocks that were on the stream channel bottom. It's a very high energy environment coming through that culvert under the road, and there's a couple of storm drains which discharge there. But I had to move several large cobbles before I could auger down into the sediment, and it just seems a little bit hard to believe that during the release of a home heating oil, which is made of constituents that tend to rise on the water surface, that in such a short amount of time they would penetrate below a pretty thick layer of cobbles and get down into the substrate. So my initial sense is that we're looking at a different release, and yes, if we were to take a closer look at some of the chromatographs and some of the more forensic evidence, we might be able to establish that a little bit more clearly.
Yeah, understood. And I think you're on the right track. You have a hypothesis that the nature of the material wouldn't transmit down to into the soil beneath the water, at that point that's pretty far down the line on Mosquito Brook, but that's the scientific method. You're going to do more testing, and you're going to determine, by the nature of that material, by further analytical chemistry analysis, that it is or is not a result of the spill. So yeah, stay on that, please. That's
Understood.
all.
Mr. Chairman, I think that we're kind of ignoring, or not ignoring, we're letting something get glossed over that shouldn't be, and that is the impacts to the ecology. Mike does a good job of calling it out on page 2, impacts to ecology. In italics, you see the report from Clean Harbors that basically says, it says, at the time of the initial release, impacts to the brook and floodplain ecology were likely minimal, considering that during winter, most wetland plants, invertebrates, turtles, including Blanding's turtles, and amphibians are not present are dormant, or their biological activity is so diminished by the cold that they do not take up the pollutants or even essential nutrients at significant levels. No fish kills were reported. Dead animals did not accumulate in booms. Therefore, during the immediate following initial release, exposure pathways for most aquatic and floodplain receptors were incomplete, indicating that under the worst exposure conditions, impacts did not occur. My response to that is nonsense. The best example of what is occurring and did occur is what's not happening right now out in that floodplain of Mosquito Brook. There are no nesting species observed: Canadian geese, ducks, red-winged blackbirds. There are no dead fish because we stopped the Commonwealth of Mass from stocking the brook. We called them up and put a cease and desist order on that request. Amy did that for us because we knew that it would serve no purpose to dump the fish into the brook and they were just going to die. This is being glossed over by Clean Harbors because they're saying, well, it was during winter, so no impact. There's nothing happening out there right now from an ecological point of view. But since I'm not technically qualified to challenge the ecological assessment being conducted by Clean Harbors, my suggestion to the commission here tonight would be for the commission to hire an ecological assessment on floodplains and freshwater brooks to go out and make that assessment that is being presented by Clean Harbors and being reviewed by Mike, and I'd like to have somebody that is on that level, on that playing field. Have the town have us have our own ecological assessment expert that can go toe to toe with the applicant's ecological assessment expert. Let's level the playing field. Let's give ourselves another person that we can rely upon for this information. I can tell you what I don't see out there, and I live out there. And I can tell you what has been out there for the past 50 years. And that's a nesting area for, the report says there was no problem for the Blandings turtles. I'll bet you if you went out there right now, you couldn't find one. We need to have our own person to say this, to go out and do the assessment. And if Clean Harbors is right, I would have much more confidence in having it be affirmed by somebody that is working for us. It's a matter of when you're working for somebody, you tend to be in their favor. And so let's have our own person so that we have check and balance. That's my recommendation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
This is Tony Rodolakis with Wood. I'd like to rebut that.
Sure.
When we were out there conducting the field sampling in early April, we identified a number of species that were present, ranging from wood frogs that were just starting to emerge and swim in the water column, to great blue heron, to muskrats, mink, Canada goose, mallards, and all of this was reported in the preliminary technical memorandum. It was too early for red-winged blackbirds, but there were other songbirds in the area. And we observed those on multiple days. And I may even have photographs of those. I'll have to go through my files and pull them out. But this isn't the first time that the speaker has alleged that we are biasing our observations. And I take a little bit of offense to that. We are professionals. We are environmental scientists. I personally have 27 years in the business. I work for a number of clients, whether they're regulatory, state and federal governments, local governments. I work all sides. I don't take sides. We go out, we report our observations, we follow the regulations, we follow the guidelines, we follow standard operating procedures, and we follow best practices. And if you have any substantial information or evidence that we are biasing our results or biasing our observations, I would like to hear it, because frankly, it's inaccurate.
I appreciate your response, and so that in order to prove you right, if we take on our expert to work with you, we will then have the confidence we need to believe you. And yes, I have been a detractor. I remain I remain of the opinion that Clean Harbors has essentially been mailing it in since this thing happened. And I appreciate expert testimony, I respect expert testimony, but I also believe that you have to trust but verify. And that's the basis for my opinion. But I appreciate your response. Thank you.
Just to add to that, Pat was out there today and he sent me some pictures showing a number of Canadian geese present out in the meadow area there. And I agree with what Tony has said, that he is a very good professional, and that's why we brought him on board to assist us with regards to this situation.
If I could weigh in real quick with GI's perspective, which I would not have expected Alan or Tony to have a chance to digest quite yet. We're not disputing their findings and the species that they observed. I think we've observed them ourselves. What we are disputing is the understanding of the level of impact at this time. Our concern is around whether or not the state, we understand that these species are there. Our concern is to what level have they been impacted? Our suggestion for this is to continue those evaluations through the spring and summer to confirm populations have not been impacted, or if they have, what are the opinions and to what extent?
I would respond to that by saying, you know, the data that we presented, we looked at several transects through the length of the marsh, downstream of the culvert, and to this point, the discussion has been around, you know, the transect at SD2, maybe a little bit about SD3, but certainly in that upper area of the release. As we work our way downstream, we don't find petroleum hydrocarbons in the sediment itself. We don't find it in the surface water, and we don't find it in the floodplain wetland soil, which I think is pretty compelling. You're right. I think we do need to balance some of the detections in that upper reach of the release area to find a little bit more about the lateral extent. But when you're looking at the overall size of the wetland and the area that's defined by transect 3 going back upstream toward the culvert, you're looking at an area that's less than 5% of that wetland marsh complex. So in terms of population level declines, just considering that line of evidence, you basically have 95% of this wetland which is unaffected, where if PAHs are detected, they're detected at background levels that have been established by Mass DEP. So if there are impacts to fish and wildlife and other ecological receptors, it's going to be in a very narrow area. And US EPA and Mass DEP typically look at a cutoff of a 20% decrease of survival, growth, and reproduction of a population or community of organisms. They use a 20% decrease as the threshold for an adverse effect. And just by doing the math, I don't think you're going to get a 20% decrease in the populations of the marsh from a 5% area where we're finding, at the most, where we're finding petroleum hydrocarbons.
Understood, but I think what we're asking for is the data to prove that, and not, you know, we have a preliminary assessment that shows these things. We have not evaluated the width and extent, or how data to that shows the width and extent of that hummock, how big that oil is. We're estimating 5%. What if it's 10? What if it's bigger? I mean, there was a time in late February, right before melt, where we saw oil throughout the wetlands. In fact, we had to close trail systems. I think, again, the level of the preliminary investigation is a step along the path, but I think more data is required to determine the impact. And the impact very well may be none. We didn't find any, but I think the statement is premature.
Okay, but I would encourage you to look a little bit closer at the wetland soil locations. It's probably hard to tell from the figure that was there, but some of those locations were within 10 or 15 or 20 feet of the main channel, and we weren't finding anything. So I'm at least from what I saw and trudging through it, we spent a lot of time walking through the hummocks, and really the only place that we detected an odor and where we saw any type of sheening was up there by SED 2, where you walk through the hummocks, and then the sequestered oil gets agitated, the hummocks get agitated and the oil gets released to the water surface. Those observations were very limited to the upper reach of the release area. And so I think the information that we have, especially those wetland soil locations that were collected in very close proximity to the main channel, that those are coming up clean, to me indicates that it's a very localized issue at this point. But like you said, it's a preliminary assessment, and when we get into the stage 1 and stage 2 risk characterizations, and the phase 2 reporting, we'll get into that in a little bit more detail.
Yeah, I think we're all in agreement with that.
Okay, I want to keep it brief, because if we keep it going, we're here till midnight. My issue is the lack of productivity between Clean Harbors and Mike and the LSPs that are involved in this. We're looking for 200 gallons. It happened 4 months ago. Alan, you designated certain areas that are concentrated. In 4 months, it should have been rectified, those areas, so Mike could look at the information you give him and say, okay, that area is clean, and then move on to the next section, instead of trying, well, it's over here, and it's over there, and it's over here. That stuff is probably in Ipswich right now, but, this is carrying on, and Mike, I know you're working for us. If they're not providing information to you in a quickly fashion, so we can react, instead of you getting information the day before a meeting that we don't even get to read it till we're at a meeting and seeing it, you're representing us. You have the technical knowledge of I don't know about all these numbers, but I'm just saying. I was a businessman. I was very efficient. I worked on one thing and moved on to the next. Just jumping over and not getting information that I asked a month ago is not being answered. That's why the last time I said we didn't want to hear anything unless the enforcement order was all the points in the enforcement order were covered, and evidently they're not covered. So I mean, what's this going to be for the next 50 years, and then we're going to go into phase 2? I mean, it's time for you, Mike, and Clean Harbors to get together. And Mike, you got to stay on them because you're representing us. You're being paid by them, but you're representing us. I think it's time that the professionals act professional and do their professional jobs. Thank you.
Tony, I don't know when you jumped into this fray, but as you can see, there's a lot of skepticism and doubt from this committee concerning Clean Harbors' response to what happened there. It's always good to know your audience. So, ordinarily you could walk into a room and be greeted in one way, but based upon what we've seen so far, we are skeptical of Clean Harbors' response and concerned about it, as well as any of the follow-up. So, I know you've been retained by them, so, that's life when you've been retained by a client that's in a situation. So, that's all I wanted to say on that. And I agree with the comments of my other commissioners.
Yeah, I'll just say I agree that ecological monitoring, plants and wildlife under some method would be good. But I think without baseline data, like actual data instead of actual observations, it would be difficult to say whether any changes in wildlife or vegetation would be directly due to the spill. There's just nothing to really compare it to. I do think it's a good idea, though, just to see if there are changes over time, even if it's just anecdotal.
What I'm hoping to accomplish, if my recommendation is acted upon, what I'm hoping to accomplish is to have our own ecological risk assessor on ground in the field, generating his or her own observations, and just keep the playing field level. That's trust but verify is the only way I can say it.
Yep.
A lot of us, that area is not unknown to us all. That BLSF for that brook is well known. What the animals that live there annually, we have a pretty good idea. We just don't. None of us have gone out there and taken inventory.
Sure. Yeah. And I can actually walk there from my house. I take my dogs there all the time, so I totally get it.
Yeah, you should.
Yep.
And I'm gonna spend a little more time out there, but I think that if we had a pro working for us that specializes in freshwater ecosystems, BLSF, that exact type of a system, would know what to look for. Tell us what you see. We can tell you what's missing.
Yep. Yeah, it certainly wouldn't hurt.
It wouldn't hurt at all. Yep. So that's what I'm asking be accomplished. I don't know how to.
What's your motion? You know how to make a
Well,
motion?
I have more to add to that.
Sorry.
Like, somebody asked, I think it was Sean, how long did Tony get into the fray? Well, Tony was here pretty early on, and I don't typically want to carry their pail of water, but Tony said in the very beginning, this is a long drawn-out process. We asked for a quicker ecological assessment. He told us it was impossible. We will give you something on a deadline, but it will be preliminary. From there, the process will evolve, and we will give you a more elaborate report. He has done that. He's done exactly what we asked of him. That's for the ecological risk characterization. What it yet has done, and we didn't ask for it yet because it's that second piece of the assessment, is to go out and actually do an evaluation of what has been the impact to the habitat and to the critters and the creatures out there, and what can be done to restore those. That's yet to come. And he told us that months ago. So Tony's done exactly what we asked of him in the time that we asked him to do it. What I asked very early on in this debate tonight was, so where do we go from there? What is that next deadline? When do we get those numbers? I think it's way premature and actually completely inappropriate to hire our own person to come in and do this. It's their problem. We should hire somebody who oversees the critique of their environmental impact, not on our own. I don't want any part of dictating or studying and telling them what to do. They tell us what to do and we approve it. That's what our job is.
I'm not asking for somebody to tell them what to do. You misunderstood my request. I'm not asking for anybody to tell them anything. I'm asking for a person working for us to go out and do a completely independent risk assessment on what's out there, independent reporting back to this commission, not reporting to Clean Harbors, not reporting to Mr. Walker.
It sounded to me like you want to do it on their behalf.
I want our expert on that type of ecosystem, on that freshwater brook, BLSF nesting area.
You want a third-party review.
But I want
on-site third-party review.
He wants a preliminary, he wants a preemptive third-party evaluation, so when we get back in, we can review what they're telling us. That's what I'm hearing. Do it before there. Typically, we review a product submitted to us. I'm hearing just the opposite. We're gonna get it, they're gonna submit to us, and we're gonna compare the results.
I think he wants the baseline as of
I want
what the condition is now, and to see what the situation is out there, and then see what their proposal is, and then have that same person look at their proposal.
So that's my interpretation, and I've been wrong with my interpretations in the past, and maybe even tonight. So I'm gonna ask Tony, is my understanding of where we were 2 months ago, when you first got into this fray, is it incorrect? And if it is, tell this commission what your next step would be, what is the timing, and what does it include? Does it include this habitat and wildlife impact, or is it strictly a ecological risk characterization in accordance with 310 CMR 40.0995? Those are just numbers to me. What does this do to assure this commission, your future work, to assure this commission that we understand the impacts of the wildlife and how do we reverse it and how does it get stabilized moving forward forevermore. That's what I need to know. And I thought I was clear on what you guys are doing, but maybe I'm wrong. Are you still on?
Well, I think we're right where we expect it to be. We have our first round of analytical data. We've written it up. We provided it to you through GEI. Have had a chance to review it and come to a couple of conclusions yourselves. And Alan, weigh in on this if I'm off track here, but I think we do need to nail down a little bit better the nature and extent of petroleum hydrocarbons in the wetland area. And then from there, we have a number of options. First, we would start with what's considered a stage 1 environmental screening, where we're basically just, it's a numbers comparison, where we're comparing our detected concentrations to ecological screening benchmarks that are non-hazardous. And I just wanted to define that term a little bit. The screening benchmarks that we use are those that are recommended by the state, and those are based on chronic exposures. Those are concentrations of contaminants at or below which you would not expect to have an adverse effect to survival, growth, and reproduction. And the studies that those are based on are considered chronic effects because they last for an entire life cycle, sometimes multiple life cycles of the test organism, or they occur during a critical life stage such as reproduction. For sediments, a lot of these organisms have about a 22 or 23-day life cycle. And so the tests run about 22, 23 days, and so they're considered chronic. In human terms, that's not very much, but in the lifespan of the test organism, it's a lifetime. We've heard of dog years. Well, these are amphipod years, which are minutes compared to humans. In any event, after that initial comparison, based on the numbers, if we're above those screening values, we proceed to what's called a stage 2 risk characterization. And that's where we can start looking at other lines of evidence, such as observations of the type that have been introduced tonight. Looking at population level studies, looking at transects of vegetation from an impact area relative, compare it to transects that are found elsewhere in the marsh that we've established to be unimpacted. And doing some comparisons. Are the same species growing? Are they growing at the same height? Are there any signs of pathology? There are studies that you can do that can help to quantify, first identify if there are any impacts, and then to quantify what that difference might be if there are any. Those are things that we can certainly consider. But I would think that, honestly, probably a more productive way of doing that, instead of doing it, having these conversations during a public hearing, would be to sit down with a couple of representatives from the Conservation Commission and with GEI, and maybe talk about this a little bit more, talk about it in person, where we're behind closed doors, we can have a little bit more of a freer exchange of ideas and move in a more collaborative process. That, I think, might help to accelerate the schedule a little bit also, instead of waiting for every couple of weeks to sit down and talk about things. If there's a chance for an interim meeting, I think that might help everybody's interest here.
So I'm hearing a clear divide between what it is you're doing within the regulations and what it is that Mr. Manzi is asking for. The divide is you're looking at substances, you're looking for concentrations, where they exist. Nothing's talking about the wildlife yet. Where is it and what is the risk from those substances? Once you know that, your next step is to take those substances and put them in some sort of analytical environment. And I heard
a more site-specific environment, I would say. Instead of using these numbers which the state gives us as threshold values as the first pass, once we get past that first pass, then we're starting to look at more specific lines of evidence.
So we're really looking at an analysis that results in a statistical probability of what the impact may be. Al is asking for something completely different. What Al is saying that we suspect, based on observations, that there are impacts to wildlife, the creatures, not the substances. There are. And is there any way, in your evaluation, do you ever, in this process that you guys are going through, is there any way that you ever intend to look at the actual creatures that are out there and determine how they've been affected? I don't know what it is. Is it feather samples? Is it blood? I don't know what it is. But how do we know that the animals that have lived there and continue to live there, have they been impacted physically? Which I think is what Al's saying and asking for, and I'm not hearing any of that in your discussion. Am I just missing something?
I think there is a little bit of a disconnect in terms of what the state requires us to do for an ecological risk assessment and the specific questions that you're asking.
You'll forgive me if I tell you that I'm not interested in what the state.
That is the disconnect. Is we're looking for an understanding of your concern about the critters, the creatures that are out there, is not part of this process yet. It maybe never will be, because if they stay below risk factors, it never gets there.
They're different regulations.
Yeah, and that's the disconnect of why we're saying we're not getting it, because they're not doing it.
Because they don't have.
We're not doing it yet. What the state wants us to do is first to look at these threshold values, and these are based on a lot of research, a lot of studies. Some of them are laboratory based, some of them are based on field studies, and these are values that through the scientific community, through the toxicological community, there's a level of consensus that an organism or a population of organisms that are exposed to those concentrations over the long term aren't going to experience any decreases in survival or growth rates or reproductive rates, and that's why they're considered non-hazardous. They're concentrations below which you would expect to find an adverse effect. And if we're above those, then we start asking more detailed questions, and that's where we start to look at the organisms that are actually there. There are some occasions where we would have to apply for a scientific collection permit from the state, and we would collect invertebrates and or fish, or we would trap field mice or voles or shrews or muskrats or something, other types of organisms. And we would take the specimens, we would send them to a laboratory, we would grind them up, homogenize is the scientific word, and then we would take the samples of the ground-up organism, run them through the equipment, to analyze body burdens, tissue body burdens, and to find out how much of these chemicals are actually getting into the organisms. We do the same thing with plants. We do the same thing with really whatever is living there, and we can understand with much more clarity how these chemicals are moving through the environment from their source to the receptor. Sometimes it's with certain contaminants, it's blood samples or feather samples, but usually that doesn't happen unless you're well above these threshold screening values.
If I could jump in for a quick moment, because we are definitely going down the really fun scientific path that I'm sure everyone really wants to go down tonight. Where we're at today is we're to Joe's point, we're at the point we have a preliminary data set. This is the kickoff point. And while I think the hope was this information could have been provided earlier in the process, we're here today. We have a baseline data set. What falls from here are the decision points that allow the responsible party to make recommendations to the town of whether or not or what a cleanup might look like. And to Tony's point, this is the process through the Massachusetts contingency plan that they are following, and in our opinion, is the right process to follow. And I think Tony's recommendation of meetings to hammer this out, hammer out the scope, hammer out the timing would probably best serve the town as well. And I think that's the right way to go, because we are now in the thick of it. The process is moving forward as it's supposed to, and now it comes down to the commission. I would suggest to kind of facilitate the timelines that need to be followed.
I just have a quick question with the, Mike, based on the information that they have supplied to you, do you feel that I could ask Clean Harbors, are they doing their diligence based on state regs, or are they following any of our bylaws or any information that this commission has asked for?
I think they are following both. The information provided is generally in accordance with the enforcement order. I couldn't tell you if everything is to the letter, but they are also following the requirements of the Massachusetts Contingency Plan. I think they are serving both of those currently.
Okay, because this is the second time that I heard by the state when Mr. Manzi asked for something. This is the second time that previously he had asked Alan for something and he didn't want to supply it.
His answer was very candid. He didn't lie to me. He said that the DEP doesn't require it, which he's not wrong.
No, but I'd just like to know what guidelines that they're, so that we know what's happening. But I agree with you with the, that we should set some type of timeline, because this is silly. We wait every 2 weeks, we do a baby step, and we spend an hour and a half on stuff. There's no, this isn't a major, I know it's an environmental impact, but it seems to me like it's out of control. I mean, nothing seems to be happening that should be happening.
Well, can we move to agree to?
If I might, I think that the process, so the where we're at is the sensitivity of the area. Mass DEP, and I agree with this, and I've heard it loud and clear from them, is they don't want to dig up wetlands. What we're trying to understand is what remedy needs to be imparted, if any, based on the impacts to ecology, ecology sectors, human health, essentially. So I hate to say it, but this is part of the process and the way we have to go. So this baseline data now fuels everything else for the next steps, and that hammering out process, I think, is the next critical path item.
So we've set up subcommittees on projects that profit developers and other landowners. I think it behooves us to set up a subcommittee where we are the landowner, and to help better understand and help navigate how it is getting through this process. I think it's high time we do such a thing and get a subcommittee of this commission to work with a group so we can hash out these very, very complicated details at a table outside of a public meeting. And I don't mean to mask it, I'm saying as a matter of efficiency. So when we come back, we can reach a unified report back to the commission, and then discuss and debate the specific issues rather than the generalities. Because it isn't go down the road and you eventually get to the end. They're a side path you're going to go down and retrace back because it gave us a certain result, and we're going to now go down another path. And it may take us way down before we have to retrace. But it's not a straight line all the way through this thing. And this preliminary report gave us a map to follow, but it's not the precise map. It just gets us in a particular direction for now. And what I'm trying to get an understanding on,
That took 4 months.
are we talking another month? Are we talking another 10 months? Are we talking another 10 years? That I don't know. And I think the commission itself is getting frustrated because we don't know that at all. We're dissatisfied that it's been 5 months since the release, 4.5 months since the release.
I think the answer is really simple to the question you just asked. Clean Harbors et al. Benefit greatly from this just dragging out. We have no way to make them work any faster. I had hoped that the only way to do it would be to get our own people on board to be able to check and balance, but that appears to be a non-starter.
That's me. I think you might have support of the rest of the commission. I'm not sure.
Here's where I'm going, okay? Here's where I'm going. These guys have made it clear that they're following the state regs, and they're following it by the numbers, and they can't go any faster because they can only go one step at a time. That's what they're telling you. They've got DEP to agree with them. Our own consultant says, yeah, that's a fact, that's what they're doing. We're not gonna make, taking this into a subcommittee and taking it out of the public eye, again, only benefits Clean Harbors, because then there's no disagreement or exposure publicly. I would respectfully object to taking it out of the public eye. I think it needs to stay right here, right where it is, and we just have to do the best we can to make our own observations and call them out. That's my feeling.
And I completely agree with the transparency of it all. That's not what I was suggesting. Subcommittees typically take the use of those meetings as an efficient way of hammering out the details, so that when we come back to the next public session, the details.
And we've used them,
are presented.
and they've worked.
Well, if you want to do it, fine, but...
No, and again, we can spend 2 hours every night
No,
and come up to the same end result that we could do in half the time. But
I'm coming to the reality that it doesn't matter what we do. They're following the regs by the numbers as they observe. That's what they're doing. They're not refusing to do it. They're saying this is how we do it. I don't agree. The impacts of the ecology, that paragraph that is published on page 2 and 3 on the ecological risk assessment, that's really almost insulting. But we have nobody to rebut it.
to nudge this thing along, I certainly think it makes sense for us to have conversations with a consultant of that sort and make sure what is it we're asking for, and find out what that might cost and what that would be worth. So at least when we come to the next meeting, we can have a better understanding. Because right now, it sounds to me like when we don't really know what we want, and the worst client you could possibly have is one that a consultant doesn't know what you're looking to receive.
I think it's pretty clear what we're looking for. We want to know what's happening out there right now, and we're getting information that I don't necessarily agree with. I think the impacts are greater than being reported. I said that. I said it publicly. The experts on the other side are offended by what I say. I don't mean to offend anybody personally. It's just that's the way I see it. So.
All right, so let's, I don't think we need to have it continued till the next meeting. But I think we should give them some more time and give them direction. If you want to do a subcommittee, I think it should be, I don't want to be part of it, because
Nor do I.
I would like to see the engineers that are on this commission, or if you want, maybe you with the legality, or Jack with the being the chemical part of it. If you guys be willing to do it.
We need a wildlife ecosystem expert, an ecological risk assessor, somebody that knows those ecosystems inside out, to go out there and do a real, no-nonsense assessment on the wildlife that's observed in place. What's actually there? Take inventory. That's what needs to be done.
All right, I'll do it. No, just kidding.
Go ahead.
Why don't we,
I think we hired an outside consultant to do that.
Put on your hip.
But we know who to find.
well, then, have them pay for an outside consultant to work with the subcommittee for starters, and then come back and give us some information, because this is a total waste of time. All I do is they come up here and get aggravated because nothing's happening.
It's not a waste of time. It's not a waste of time. It's just we have no way to force them.
Well, then that does.
So can we vote on a subcommittee, see if that flies?
I don't think there's support for a subcommittee.
I think it's a consensus. Would you be interested in having a subcommittee?
Not one that I'm part of. No offense, but somebody else want to take the master plan implementation committee, I'll jump off of that and do a subcommittee,
Yeah,
but
he's got a full
my
plate.
plate is full.
Jack, would you be interested in having a subcommittee? I know Joe does. I would, but I don't want to be part of it. 'Cause
I'm in favor of getting to the bottom of the wildlife impacts and if I can be a part of that, fine, I'll do it, but I'm as frustrated, you know, I haven't been speaking up much, because I've been out in the field with Mike and Amy and with that DEP guy, and it's pretty clear we're just feeding the bureaucracy here. We're not doing things in this effort that have any impact on the quality of our wetlands. I honestly feel that way, and it's frustrating for me. If this would help, fine.
Well, let me.
But I don't think we're heading in a very good direction.
Let me ask Amy. A couple of meetings ago, we talked about
in any direction.
the town
This was just going around in circles.
protecting its, that's our land, that's town-owned land out
Yeah.
there. What have we done as landowners to protect our interests out there with regards to this spill? Has town council filed any type of documentation or memorandum with the parties that spilled the oil?
Yeah, I mean, she's put the responsible parties insurance company on notice, you know, engaged them and made sure that, you know, our third party's being paid for and things to that extent.
So one of the things we would have to show is damage. We have to show damage.
The slippery slope, you
We-
can help me if you want.
We can't show damage if we don't have somebody out there.
One conversation.
I don't think we should discuss
Well,
potential
then,
litigation or strategy.
then
No.
let's just continue this thing, because I'm all done.
Yeah, same here, same here.
I'm all done. Let's continue it. 2 weeks or 4 weeks?
2 weeks.
2 weeks?
And then we'll let them know if they actually need to appear, and maybe
Okay.
just submit reports.
Okay.
What's the next report we're supposed to anticipate?
It's in
The next one is
it's in
the,
GEI.
So we have the preliminary ecological risk characterization, but there's going to be some sort of summary of when we
They're gonna submit, they're gonna have Tony Radakis submit the evaluation on impacts of ecology, habitat, flora, and fauna. That's on.
So Tony, can you have that done in 2 weeks?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
On the Clean Harbors, Alan Walker's letter on the second to last page, paragraph 1 on the second to last page, the page is not numbered, it just says 3-37288. It says, I respectfully request, this is Alan's writing now, he says, I respectfully request that we delay a response to this question on the evaluation of impacts to ecology, habitat, flora, and fauna, that we delay the response until our ecological risk assessor, Tony Rodolakis, and I apologize if I mispronounced, returns, as he is the best person to opine on this. He is expected to return next week.
Okay, well, first, I'd like to be able to review the comment letter that was issued today in a little bit more detail.
Okay.
It didn't come through until about 1:30, and I read it quickly, but I'd like to read it in a little bit more detail.
So that would be the May 11th GEI letter, is that?
Yes.
Yes, that's the one.
I think that's fair. I think that's fair request.
And then in terms of,
So I'm gonna move that we
in
continue.
terms of a impact assessment,
Yeah. Yeah.
let me read the May 11th letter, and I can I'll talk to Alan and we'll come up with some type of a timetable or at least an outline of what we think the next steps are.
I suggest we continue for 2 weeks in the hopes that they're prepared to answer the May 11th letter. And if not, they should be able to submit some sort of letter to us of how they intend to address those points.
I think that's
I
2 weeks.
think it should be
So-
4.
4?
And so we'll actually, he should be able to generate the report in 4 weeks. Why have it in 2 weeks and have
No,
him
that's
tell
fine,
us that
that's
we're
fine.
not gonna have it?
2 weeks, 4 weeks, that's fine.
So continue for 4 weeks.
So I move that we continue for 4 weeks.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, that's unanimous. Hopefully, Tony, you'll have that report in 4 weeks.
If I could ask a quick question of the commission, and of Amy and I guess of the town, to kind of facilitate this, can GEI be involved if Tony has any questions or Alan has any questions? They can reach out to us directly.
Absolutely.
GEI,
I think so.
we would hope GEI remains involved.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
Oh, no, rather with direct communication to help us get this done in the next 4 weeks. I know it's going to be a lot to get done, but I want to make sure we can be available to if they want to reach us directly for questions.
Yeah, Mike, I think, passing and sharing of information absolutely is legit. What I'd be real cautious is that you're not making decisions on our behalf, because that if there's such a thing that looks like a decision, you let Amy know, and then Amy can circulate it through the chairman. But you would do that anyway. I just want to make sure, if you're having that interaction, you're not making decisions that we may disagree with in the future. That's all I ask.
Then my suggestion might be that if Alan and Tony are on board, and if we need to have calls or anything, maybe both Amy and I can attend them, pending people's availability, Amy's availability to schedule. Maybe that would be the best way to handle it.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
That's fine with us.
Okay,
All right,
thank you.
good.
Thanks,
All right.
everybody.
Okay, let's move on.
Okay.
We did the motion in a second, right?
Huh?
We did the motion in a second.
Done, we
right?
voted, it's 4 weeks.
Thanks.
Done deal.
All right, next one
All right,
is,
next.
we don't have to do Salem Street, right? Because we already addressed that.
Right, that's right.
We rescinded that order, right?
Yes, we did.
Okay.
Correct. Yes.
Next one is 121 Amberville Road.
If you'll excuse me while you...
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Hi, this is Nancy. I did what I could to remove the pea stones. I think that's it's pretty decent. I really try my best. You are welcome to visit my backyard.
So the commission will recall issuing an enforcement order for requiring restoration of the 25-foot no disturb zone next to a BBW that contains a vernal pool. The deadline was today to carry out several restoration activities. Nancy's wetland consultant, Bob Prokop, provided you with a letter today detailing his findings of efforts to date. Taylor, our field inspector, went out today to take a look. So essentially, all that's been done is the removal of the pea stone. The commission asked for the non-natives to be removed, the mulch to be removed, and the steps, the wooden steps, or the log steps.
So right, the wooden step, because I broke my leg 2017, I could not walk there without the steps, and those steps been there for a while, and I don't think that is very close to the water. I think at least 50, 100 feet from the water. And I do need those so that I can walk to my yard. Can you hear me?
Yeah. And the commission's looking at the materials.
I did not play anything that's not the logo.
Let me try to take this from here. There seems to be a breakdown in communication on both what the requirements are, both when the lot was first developed and perpetual to the lot, to what a homeowner can and cannot do. Things have been done that should not have been done. We typically put a deadline or a timetable in place to get things restored. What I think we've been discussing is they can't stay there. It has to all be restored in the end.
there needs to be some reasonable time frame when that happens. We are sympathetic to things like injuries and personal situations, and we oftentimes would consider some reasonable extension of time to get things done. But what I'm hearing quickly is that the pea stone was removed because it's the best you could do, and I appreciate that. But the other things, it sounds like you're trying to justify of why they've been there and why you might want them to continue to be there.
Yes.
What I'm also hearing is that there are things that have been done even subsequent to the first order going out, like mulch being brought in and some trees and plants being planted. So I think that's where the communication breakdown is occurring, is that there are things that you can do in your yard, and there are things that you cannot do in the yard. And the things that you have done that should not have been done have to be put back, period.
Right. I have to say, nothing that I have done this and intentionally to hurt anyone, including
No, we
animals.
understand that, and I'm trying to, I'm just.
Maybe we can have a clear communication, because I really do not think I planned anything, at least in a couple of years now. Those are.
And we're blessed with very good staff. We're very knowledgeable about the regulations and the rules, but more importantly, they're knowledgeable about fairness and the types of things that need to be done to put things right. And they're all, and the more valuable is that they're able to talk to citizens like yourself to help you understand. Because I think I don't ever believe that you did anything on purpose, but at the same token, we have to work together to get them right.
Hello?
So that's.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, and again, in your representative, this is Mr. Prokop?
Yeah.
And again, we have staff who can help, but Bob, you're.
Yes, I appreciate that. If I can get any advice.
Yeah, but Bob, you're a wet wound professional who has a client who needs to be represented, and you know what it is we're looking for, and if not, Amy will make that crystal clear to you. You really need to work with Amy and your client, more importantly, to get across the importance of what has to be done and when. But I think to suggest that we might be willing to leave things there, I can tell you, I'm not, and I don't think the commission is. So that's all I have to say, but that's my recommendation, is that you guys work together, and we'll establish a timetable that's realistic. But, and we are sympathetic to the injury. That's all I have to say.
Can I interrupt for a second?
Go ahead, Bob.
I was having trouble with the mute button. So, I submitted a restoration plan back, I think it was dated March 8th, which included removing the pea stuff and then planting the walkway that was created there with various native trees and shrubs. The big thing we were trying to do is if you saw the report that I submitted this morning, because I didn't know we were on the agenda for today, what we'd like to do is retain the stairs, and I have some pretty good pictures of what it looks like right now. But from my March 8th report, once the pea stone was removed, it was going to be replanted with native vegetation. And the other thing is we'd like to keep the non-native herbaceous plants that are put on the slope, because they're not considered nuisance species, but they're just not native. And in the pictures I submitted today, I don't know if you had a chance to look at any of them. You can see what we're trying to keep. Basically, what we're trying to do is keep the stairs and keep the plants that are there, and then we would augment the area where the pea stone is with, that would be replanted with native shrubs, meadowsweet, among other things, silky dogwood and stuff, and that's in the report I submitted, way back in March.
So I'm gonna restate my earlier recommendation, is that staff work with the homeowner, but apparently we have to work with the consultant as well to get an understanding of what our expectations are, because any unauthorized work that would not normally be approved, we're not typically, and I can say I'm not ever inclined to let stay there. If it was done in violation to the order conditions and perpetual conditions, then it's gotta come out. And to suggest that it might stay, then I think Amy needs to make clear to you, Bob, as well, so you can make clear to your client that that's the case. But it's to break out, you know,
Can you repeat that?
it's the same thing I said to you, ma'am, but it's, now I'm directing the same comment to your consultant. There are things that we are able to let happen by permit, and there are things that we are not able to let happen. So
Okay, I appreciate that.
if Bob is asking for us to continue to allow something that exists there that should not have been there, and to let it happen now with some sort of a waiver, I can tell you it's not gonna happen. And that's what Bob needs to understand. And I'm all set. I mean, I have
So
others.
how to apply this waiver?
No, Nancy, you're not getting a waiver for the 25-foot no disturb zone, and I think Bob.
No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the steps, so I can walk down there.
Yeah, well, the point is that it's a no disturb zone, so there is no need to walk down there. So
Okay,
the steps
there's
need to
no-
go if they're in the 25-foot no disturb zone. So
Okay, those
we can
steps
talk
are-
offline, we can meet
They're
with you
away than
on the
25
property.
feet, I can tell you that. Much further than 25 feet.
Okay, we can get on site and take measurements and
Right,
and
I
talk about it
appreciate that.
together.
Yes, I appreciate that.
But my point is that the stairs that were put in there, which was subsequent to Nancy breaking her leg walking down the slope, if you see the pictures that I submitted today, and I know you probably didn't have time to look at everything, they're basically almost no different than what was originally there. The slopes are the same. It's all native, it's all, the stairs are made from wood that was probably there. It's not pressure treated or anything like that, just logs. But the main thing is, we would like to keep the plants that you put in now, which are just starting to sprout. They're not native, but they're not nuisance plants. They're not something that's spread. It's basically like if you planted tulips within 25 feet of a wetland. What you guys are saying is those have to be removed. You can't have tulips within 25 feet of a wetland. We'd like to leave what's there and then augment the plantings or add new native shrubs right in the pathway that was there, that all the pea stone was removed from. So we'd like to keep the stairs, we'd like to keep the vegetation that Nancy has already planted there. And it's small ornamental herbs. And, but we can, redo the planting plan, but again, there was a plan submitted back in March 8th, I think is the date, showing where we would plant, native vegetation.
Yeah, let's go. It's in the 25.
This is a very, very small garden, okay? It's a little bit more than a quarter of an acre.
We're gonna move on.
Mrs.
I'm gonna have the
Controller.
commission continue, establish a deadline, and Taylor and I are gonna come out with you and Bob, and we're gonna walk it and talk it, and, you really need to follow what we ask you to do, because we know exactly what the commission wants. So we're gonna do it face-to-face on site, okay?
Thank you so much.
Is there an enforcement order in place right now?
Yes, there is.
Okay, you already have an enforcement order, correct, Mrs. Wong?
Yes. Yes.
So if you have an enforcement order already issued by this commission, you're directed to follow it to the letter. No exceptions, no appeals, no waivers. Is that clear?
Are we still gonna do a meeting though with,
Mr. Prokop, did you hear what I just, did you hear what I just said?
there is.
If you heard it and you understood it, that's the end of it, okay?
Well, I'm not done with it yet.
Well, we are, we're done, we're done, and we're gonna say goodnight to you right now.
You're in the
No,
25.
but we can appeal this, we can appeal.
Then appeal it, then appeal it, file the appeal.
You appeal. Matter of
Go
fact,
ahead and appeal.
We'll
See you later.
Isn't that a conservation restriction? I mean, if I know that neighborhood, I live in that neighborhood, or lived. I'll tell you, everything if you go up Amberville, everything on the right side is part of a conservation restriction. 75 foot, I think, distance from there. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it.
He should,
So can I just ask, was
Yes.
work done after the initial enforcement order? Were
Yes.
additional plantings put in?
Mulching, definitely new mulching.
Okay.
It's difficult to tell if new plantings were put in because I was out in the winter
Yeah.
and
So there's
Stuff
really
leaked out.
two violations, right? There's the original
Continuation.
violation, and then there's the non-compliance and additional work. So, you know, in terms of an appeal, I mean, every time a deadline is missed or something like that, a new enforcement order could be issued.
When
So
was the EO?
at the end of the day, there could be multiple enforcement orders and multiple appeals if it really came down to it. I think this is very simple, and I'm not really sure what's happening in terms of miscommunication or misunderstanding. You know, the non-native plants gotta go, and native plants have to go in. I don't even know why we're still discussing
You're right,
it, really.
yep.
Yeah,
Right.
I think we should send it to two fines. It wants to appeal.
You know,
we'll
and-
do
and-
two fines.
You know, if there's any basis of appeal, you remember, you've got a perpetual condition of preserving the 25 no disturb and the 50-foot no build. The plan is the plan, so everything that's been done with a perpetual condition on a recorded instrument on that property.
Exactly.
I don't know how the hell you appeal it.
Appeal it, I mean,
How do
you
you
have
appeal
rights.
it? You're in violation, and you're giving your client counsel to continue to be in violation? That's ridiculous.
And appeals of an enforcement order don't go to DEP, they go to
They go to
court.
Superior
They go to
Superior
court, yeah, I mean, yeah, go ahead and lose.
So, but I think at some point, with reluctance of this applicant to adhere to the enforcement order, I think fines should be put in place.
I concur.
Okay, so establish a new deadline by
Yep.
which
No,
the
no new
enforcement
deadline.
order.
Fines start now.
we already established a deadline.
Deadline's come and gone.
This enforcement order
Okay.
was put in March.
Okay.
Yeah, but to appear here tonight, so that they've met that deadline.
Okay, and they refused to do anything.
So
So
I
I think
think
the fine should start
Beginning
today.
tonight.
Oh, so, okay, so amend the enforcement order to institute fines that begin tonight, today, for non-compliance with the enforcement order, and they continue until compliance is reached.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous.
Motion
Have a
to-
good evening.
Motion to continue,
To the 25th?
25th.
25. So moved. A second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous.
Okay.
All right, so Nancy, we'll,
She got off already.
okay, Bob, we're gonna get in touch with you and Nancy and schedule a site visit.
Okay.
Thanks.
Why do you have to do a site visit?
Because we got,
We
For all the
gotta-
reasons we just.
I think we have to. do
there's a
little-
breakdown in communication,
little
they gotta make sure they understand completely.
I
Oh,
think-
he
I think-
understands.
I think they understood very well.
Yeah, he understands.
Okay, next one is 58 Empire Drive.
Okay, this is really easy. So the commission issued an enforcement order requiring the removal of a gas cooking grill from out of the 25. I provided a picture showing the grill has been moved to the far side of the patio, well out of 25. So the EO has been complied with, and you can lift the enforcement order.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous.
Okay.
Thank you. Last but not least, 40 Flagship Drive.
So there is a notice of intent that is signed by the downstream abutters. Norse Environmental is waiting for the final fee checks and stamp plan from the applicant to submit.
Clock's ticking, right?
Clock's ticking.
Okay, beautiful, all set.
Next.
Move to continue.
Second.
Next one, decision.
Aye. Aye.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
All
Opposed.
those in favor?
Fix it. Forget the ayes. Opposed.
Stands continued, thank you.
Okay,
Good
that's-
night, good night, David.
Right.
This is what happens when we go past 10 o'clock.
I know,
Jamie.
I know we're late by schedule.
We found a slipper.
You have, okay, right.
Wait, so, Mr.
No
Chairman?
Pond, 242-1841.
Decision.
Excuse me. You continue
I'll try.
trotting away.
I'll try.
Hard of hearing, did you say 1841 or 1840?
So it's,
1841, right?
1840.
well, it's mislabeled on the,
Ah,
What?
it's,
Oh, is it really?
yeah, it says 1841 on here, and,
Aha, that's why we're confused.
Oh, wait,
okay,
wait.
sorry.
wait, hold on.
Oh, no, Lacey is
No, I
41.
got the wrong-
Look at this
No,
one.
you got it right, Amy, you got it right.
You got it right. You said 41, but yeah,
Okay.
we got it.
It's Lou's fault.
Okay, whose fault?
No pond, throw me under the
All right,
bus.
so we're doing Mill Pond?
No pond,
Okay.
please.
Not everybody appreciates my sense of humor, Taylor, you know? I'm not for everybody.
We're getting rattled by everything tonight.
So which one are we doing?
Mill Pond Townhomes for the walkway.
Mill Pond Townhomes, thank you. A lot of yellow on this.
Not really. Once you get past the first part.
Once you get past it.
Bond of 2,000?
Is this part of the dam project?
No,
This is a
sidewalk.
handicap ramp, sidewalk with a
Around
handicap
the
ramp.
club.
Oh, okay.
Up to the
Around
clubhouse.
the clubhouse.
I'm clear now, yep.
I think 2,000 is good for that work.
I agree.
Just- I would hope that they don't need dewatering, but it's
Yeah,
only
I
a
know.
sidewalk.
Part of the ramp nearest the building, that's got a foundation though, right? I think there should be some dewater. Right, there's that thing comes up the slope, there's a little frost wall in there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that could be in the water table.
Yeah, okay.
It's definitely high water table over there.
No, okay. But I am not of the, where would you see that?
Good to me.
Just added, infiltration trench needs to be maintained. And that's ongoing.
If these guys are saying if they think that they might need dewatering,
Yeah.
you're gonna have them do it.
Put on, okay.
Do it. I don't like having, oh geez,
No, you're right.
by the time they put it together, it's too late.
BMP should be on site at the pre-construction.
They should have taken a site and a dewatering hole should be put in place.
Okay,
Pre-construction?
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, I don't like that, the part of putting it there in case we need it.
No, I get it.
Hay bales is one thing,
It's not even calling for hay bales, it's calling for wattles.
well, wattles, hay bales.
Okay.
50 feet of silt sock.
Any questions, Joe?
None.
Jack?
No questions.
Sean?
No, sir.
Okay, I don't think Ryan has any. Motion?
I move that we approve as amended.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, that's unanimous. Next one is 242 AT 41 Lacey Street.
We on Windrush?
Yeah. Windrush, yeah.
Condition 40,
Yeah.
missing a 0.
Oh, yeah. Is that enough?
I think so. Did the,
They're right at the 50,
did the
right?
posts, they put,
75.
they put the posts on the plan eventually, right? So we don't need to condition it?
Well,
52.
it's on the
Or
plan.
did you do both?
But we did both.
Okay, good.
And that's
51 and 52.
51.
Okay, thank you.
No waivers are requested, right?
No.
I'm good with it.
They're actually removing offending structures like roof tents and
To,
stuff out of it.
to create, to make the setback better.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like it.
So in terms of the CR posts, is pressure treated or
I thought we were-
granite, or what would you?
Which post now?
Is this one we have the granite for?
I think she offered to put the granite in too.
Yeah.
And we agreed.
Yeah.
I heard granite offered as well.
Yeah, okay. Great.
And then you don't have to worry about anything going wrong. As long as they don't hit it with a tractor. Or a horse.
Yeah,
You hit it with a tractor, it breaks.
I know.
How do I know?
Any questions, anybody? Motion?
I move that we approve 242-1841 as drafted.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's unanimous. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that's unanimous.